The following is a commercial message.
Hi, Kevin O'Leary here from Shark Tank and Beanstalk's chairman and co-owner. If you'd like to invest with me in a new fintech business, listen to this. Over 100 million Americans have no investment account. So we built Beanstalks to make investing easy and automated and to have a real impact. We then launched a crowdfunding so people can invest with me in the Beanstalks business with as little as $250. Check our website for links to the crowdfunding info. BEANSTOX.
Beanstalks is an SEC-registered internet-based investment advisor. Investing in securities involves risks and potential for loss. Before investing, consider your risk tolerance and investment objectives. For more details, see our website at www.beanstalks.com. Investments in securities are not FDIC insured. Kevin O'Leary is a strategic advisor and paid spokesperson for Start Engine, which owns the funding portal hosting the offering.
And there we go. The gorgeous Tammy Finnegan, Solar Warden. Nice to have you both here. And there's Sean Newkirk, everyone. He likes a good wave. Make sure you wave back to him. Welcome to our chat room, Sean. Appreciate that. Kimberly Joe, welcome to the SOR chat room. Thank you for joining us as we continue on here. Reverend Keith, amen to you, my friend. GFGFGFGFGFG, good to see you, buddy. By the way, your tweets today, I meant to message you. You were fantastic, by the way, in catching that little snafu there by Project, whatever his name is, Disclosure Dude, UFO Jesus. So, good job there. Good job. Gorgeous Pam McSee, good to see you. We're running out of time here. And who else do we got? My brother Eugene. Uncle Dale and his Power Stash are here. If you're in Austin, Texas, find Uncle Dale. Rub his Power Stash for good luck on Black Friday. The gorgeous and talented Kira. Game Vet, good to see you. Snakes on a UFO. Rock and roll. Let's horns up. Let's rock this right now. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including Rockin' Out Bumblefoot, reading up on Shirky Poo's News Wire, and check out our swag as well. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. Tonight, we take a look into something that is very personal to me, and that is Canada's role in ufology. What has Canada been hiding? What are they hiding for their American neighbors to the south? Why have they been so quiet when it comes to the UAP story? I almost said UFO there. I could have, because it's still the right term to use, but we'll use UAP in that sense. Tonight, from Vice magazine and Vice Online, contributing journalist Daniel Otis is with us. He is one of the real smart guys who has really taken this story by really the nuts and bolts of everything on what's happening in Canada. Why? Because no other journalist in Canada, outside of myself, is actually doing this. This is an important story. This is a story that affects Canadians, Americans, and everybody on this planet. But why has Canada been silent? And we're going to find out from Daniel tonight as we have him for the first 90 minutes of this show. Then John Hudson from the Unbiased UFO Report is going to join us for the remainder of tonight's show. And we're going to have a great time. Daniel Otis, thank you so much for coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight. You and I have been talking for a number of months here, but this is the first time we're able to hook up on the show. I apologize for keeping you up late, but I'm glad you're here, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Daniel, you are a journalist by trade, and this is a discussion that I always love to have because, when it comes to the UFO story, a lot of our listeners feel ripped off in the mainstream media, and they feel ripped off at the questions that are asked, the stories that are coming out. Everything seems so narrative in the way it's going. For you, as a journalist who's decided to cover this story, what made you step into this realm, man? I mean, this is a dangerous realm for any freelance or mainstream journalist to take on.
I think like with any story I've ever really taken a dive into, it starts with personal curiosity. I'd been aware of like the New York Times coverage from 2017, but the real spark for me was in April 2020 when the Pentagon confirmed the veracity of the 3 UFO videos that were published in the New York Times story. And I'm going to say UFO because that's the term that's used in the official Canadian documentation. So it was that, seeing that official confirmation that these were, real videos of unknown objects sort of got me very interested in the topic. I sort of absorbed as much as I could, read what I could, watched what I could. And then I started digging for Canadian data, by digging through public records and filing access to information requests. Canadian data started coming in. And when I, started Googling and searching some stuff, it just seemed obvious to me that this was a journalistic path I had to take.
For this story to come out in Canada, the news outlets have been running this, whether it's Global National, CTV, CBC, or papers like the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star, and many other big name tabloids that are out there. But the one thing that always kind of grabbed me, and it really brought ire to my thinking, man, was it was all from an American angle. We never had any journalists in Canada asking the Canadian side of this story. I think it was bad journalism, maybe bad editing. I don't know what the story is. Why do you think that Canadian journalists have been willing to cover this story, but not from a Canadian angle?
Well, I think, once the topic is validated in American outlets that are reputable, like the New York Times, CNN, etc., I think it sort of allowed Canadian editors to say, okay, this is an authentic story. But you're right, for the most part, with a few exceptions, but for the most part, Canadian media outlets aren't touching Canadian data, which is unfortunate because there's a great deal of it, official reports from professional pilots, official reports from members of the Canadian forces, entire Air Force and Canadian NORAD procedures on what to do with UFOs. Yet for largely Canadian media is silence. I can sit here and try and guess why why that's the case. But really, I think it's perhaps just not seen still as a valid topic in many eyes. I think Canadian media on the whole, with some exceptions, but on the whole tends to be a little more conservative in terms of the types of things that are covered than in the US. The New York Times, again, took a very, very bold move by opening the door for serious UFO journalism in December 2017. There still hasn't been too much of that kind of effort in Canada. I hope that changes. I hope that's thawing. I hope that, coverage of American developments on this subject will lead Canadian editors to see that there is, or perhaps search out the Canadian data. It's there to find. But I wish I could answer your question as to why. I'd love to see more coverage.
There was 2 instances that really drove me nuts. One was from the CTV, Canadian Television Network, when they interviewed for 14 minutes Chris Mellon in Washington, D.C. And not one question was asked about Canada, yet we were asking about little green men running around and flying on the earth. The second one was weeks after that. The CBC actually flew a camera crew and their Washington Bureau journalist to Wyoming to interview Lou Elizondo. And in that 20-minute interview, nothing was asked about Canada. And Lou, as we know, because I've asked him, knows that Canada is highly involved in the UFO phenomena. And it just baffles me that you have these Washington Bureau reporters whose job is to give the Canadian angle. That's what they get paid to do, the Canadian angle to what's happening in the United States. They cover the UFOs. They spend taxpayer money, in the CBC's case, to actually fly a crew to interview Elizondo, and nothing is mentioned about Canada. I find that baffling and wrong, and I'm sorry, I'm passionate about it. It upsets me.
I feel similarly, but you never know what was lost on the editing floor. You never know what was said off the record and couldn't be, run. You just don't know. But frankly, in my eyes, I think like yours, when you look at mainstream Canadian media outlets, they're just not taking this as seriously as media outlets are in the United States. But
they're not.
Hopefully that changes. I'm putting information out there. It's the data's there, right? Like it's there. It's there.
All right, so let's talk about the positive here for a second. You have really tackled this story, and I'm proud to say you're probably the only journalist that I have noticed in Canada who is really taken this story by the horns and ran with it. And I think it's wonderful. And I think what you are doing is phenomenal journalism. I think you and I have talked numerous times. Let's disclose it to the public. You and I have talked numerous times. I've shared some very important people with you that we're going to keep off the record. You have done the exact same thing with me. We've developed a healthy working relationship. Even though you got your business, I have my business. They're not really cross-referencing. But the big thing is we're working on it. We're communicating together on it. And I want to bring that up for our audience so they don't think that I'm sitting here, trying to play and say something that I don't know when I may know. You know what I'm saying? But for you, grabbing this and being really the only journalist across this massive country covering this story in depth, what has been the reaction, not only from the public, but your colleagues, for you taking on this story?
Overwhelmingly positive, to be frank. Oh my goodness. I don't know if you can hear, there's sirens and things. There's I think that I can hear outside my window. There's someone on a loudspeaker telling someone to get off a roof.
Oh, nice. Nice. Thank you,
Toronto. Yeah, this is downtown Toronto for all of you. Sorry, the reaction has been overwhelmingly positive. Look at this. I'm speaking to you. I've done well over a dozen appearances on podcasts, radio, TV. There's such an appetite for new and fresh content on this subject, and I think the public is kind of starved for new information. So much of UFO media is just looking at different angles at the same sort of incidents, the same sort of data again and again and again. So there's, I think, a real thirst for new information. So, when I'm putting out these stories that are based on access to information requests and the, reports from, credible observers like pilots, the journalists that I speak to, everybody's very encouraging. It's been, which has made it for me, really exceptionally fulfilling. Just to see that I'm putting out these stories and that there is a reaction to all of them that, people are encouraging. It really keeps me wanting to, keep doing more.
All right. What has been, though, the reaction from those people? Yes, they're liking what they're doing, but are they realizing that this phenomena is real and we need to start paying attention to it?
Well, I certainly hope so. I think that's this sort of uphill battle we have in Canadian media as opposed to the United States. The sort of major media outlets in the United States, I think the editorial departments there accept as fact that something is happening and it is real. In Canada, unfortunately, when you see segments on the subject on, TV news, half the time there are references of little green men. They make it silly. It's still taboo. I still think in Canada we have work to do to convince people that, of the veracity of this topic, that it is real, that people do see things that are anomalous, and that that's worthy of, a deeper look, investigation, instead of ridicule or dismissal.
But what amazes me is Canada has had 4 coins now made by the Canadian Mint about UFOs. They sell out within days, and sometimes hours, and we have some incredible stories of crashes, of experiences, whether it's Shag Harbor, whether it's Falcon Lake, and yet none of these people, and journalists who I'm calling people here, even seem to understand that there is a true history of ufology in Canada.
Well, and the phenomenal thing is so much of that history is available online for the public to sift through. The National Research Council of Canada was the recipient of UFO reports pretty much throughout the Cold War era. And all of their UFO archives are digitized online by Library and Archives Canada. You can go into this full database and search reports. There's thousands of them, going from the 40s or 50s up until the early 80s. And some of those reports are, from Canadian military personnel at Canadian military and NORAD bases. So, there is a history of this phenomenon in Canada. And if you want to, look back 70 years, it's there. It's publicly accessible thanks to the folks at Library and Archives Canada, which is a government institution.
Changing the topic a little bit, what did you know about UFOs before you decided to delve into this?
Well, as a child of the 90s, of course, I was watching the X-Files and things like that. But for me, it was sort of at a level of entertainment. You know what I mean? It wasn't something I really began to take seriously, up until, some of that groundbreaking New York Times coverage. I'd even been out camping, in the desert as a much younger man, and saw something, buzzing around anomalous that was quite anomalous in its, in its movements. And I just put it off to, we're near some sort of, U.S. testing ground. This was in the deserts of California. I didn't really think much of it at all until that groundbreaking.
Oh, we seem to have frozen here for a second, Daniel. We'll wait for your internet there to catch up. But, I like what he's saying.
Breaking New York Times.
There you go. You kind of stalled out there for about 10 seconds or so.
Where'd you lose me?
Goodness, when it stalls out, I hit the panic button. Like, what did I do? What did I touch? But
I couldn't be closer to the modem right now.
I know the feeling. Trust me, I know the feeling.
As I was saying, it was really the New York Times coverage for me as working as a professional journalist. I was aware of sightings. I was aware of things that were being produced on it, but unfortunately, I didn't take it seriously until really seriously until April of 2020. And interestingly enough, I was formerly a staff reporter at the Toronto Star, and which is it's a large newspaper here in Canada. And at the time when I was there was one case that came up, which will be celebrating its 5th anniversary this Sunday. And that was a Porter Airlines flight. This is a domestic airline that flies across Eastern Canada. This was a flight from Ottawa to Toronto. And while over Lake Ontario, there was an object in its way. The plane took a nosedive to avoid hitting it. 2 flight attendants were injured. And, then the plane landed. And the Toronto Star at the time did a story on it. It was 1 or 2 stories that were just sort of done as maybe it was a drone, who knows? haha. And, I was sort of kicking myself now because had I had the fire to look into the topic back then, I would have been able to uncover, so much more than what was made public at the time. It was a very interesting case that got documented beyond most aviation cases in Canada, precisely because people were injured. But it just, it just flew right past me. And yeah, it was the New York Times. I really can't emphasize enough their groundbreaking reporting, how they opened the door for the possibility, not only the possibility of this, but also to allow, myself to even think of this as a topic to tackle, using journalistic methods.
I can tell you this. I witnessed a UFO on my patio with 3 other people. And I actually called up my old radio station, and my good friend John answers the phone. And the first thing he says to me is this: "How much you been drinking, Dave? How much pot have you smoked tonight?" I'm like, "Dude, none and none." Like, all I'm asking is there people calling into the newsroom to say there's been some weird sightings in the Abbotsford and Mission area of British Columbia in the Lower Mainland? And he's like, "Nope. Why don't you go back to partying, Dave?" And this is a friend of mine who knows that, I'm not going to call up with a BS story. We worked together for 7 years. He knows I know what a story is. But that's just the attitude that seems to go around this country, where we're not wanting to look into this. We think everybody is a bunch of crackpots who is studying this. The majority of people out there, especially in the journalistic world, don't understand the brilliancy of a lot of the scientists and researchers that are out there. And in Canada alone, when you think of Grant Cameron, Chris Rutkowski, Victor Vigiani, and many others, Ryan Stacey as well. That's a good new up-and-comer there, even though, if I know Ryan's probably listening to this, so I will probably, get him to smirk when I say that, the guy hasn't shaved in about 3 years and he still looks freshly cut. It's terrible. I don't like people like that. They're untrustworthy to me. I'm kidding, Ryan. I'm kidding. But, you know who I'm talking about. There's a lot of smart people, going all the way back to Wilbur Smith, who have been covering this topic and in the darkness almost across this country.
Yeah, and it has been darkness. And I think when, I started diving into this topic and, trying to, pull Canadian data, officially from the military and transportation agencies, when I saw that none of this had, penetrated mainstream media, I frankly was shocked, because a lot of the case data I was pulling, I'm pulling material mostly over the past 20 years. As I mentioned, all that historical Cold War data was there. And you asked me how sort of my peers, my journalism peers, they...
Unexpected trouble? CashNet USA can take the stress out of borrowing emergency funds. Our fast, secure application process makes it easy to apply online 24/7. Plus, CashNet USA offers same-day funding if approved before 10:30 a.m. Central Time, Monday through Friday. Additional terms may apply. Visit CashNetUSA.com or tap the banner to apply today.
The following is a commercial message.
Hi, Kevin O'Leary here from Shark Tank and Beanstalk's chairman and co-owner. If you'd like to invest with me in a new fintech business, listen to this. Over 100 million Americans have no investment account. So we built Beanstalks to make investing easy and automated and to have a real impact. We then launched a crowdfunding so people can invest with me in the Beanstalks business with as little as $250. Check our website for links to the crowdfunding info. BEANSTOX.
Beanstalks is an SEC-registered internet-based investment advisor. Investing in securities involves risks and potential for loss. Before investing, consider your risk tolerance and investment objectives. For more details, see our website at www.beanstalks.com. Investments in securities are not FDIC insured. Kevin O'Leary is a strategic advisor and paid spokesperson for Start Engine, which owns the funding portal hosting the offering.
They're very encouraging now, but in the early days when I began, a lot of people thought I was a little bit nuts. But when I started showing them things like, intelligence reports from the Air Force about, pilots seeing things over Canada. Then once there was that sort of tangible official documentation, like to back up, this stuff, then I noticed people's perspectives starting to change. And I think that's one thing, my reporting is really focused on official procedures and reports from, what we would call, I guess, the most credible observers, police officers, military personnel, professional aviators, people who really have nothing to gain by filing official reports. Actually, people who probably only have, things to lose by filing reports in terms of, stigma and ridicule in the workplace. And the reason I focus on those reports is because I think in the minds of people who haven't really delved into this topic, that, these are sort of trustworthy, uniformed people who would have no reason to make any of this up. So that's sort of been my approach. And, there's so much more. I know your show talks about, delves into, experiencers and things like that. We can't even begin to get into that in mainstream Canadian media. I think the main thing, the main mission right now is to convince people, across the country that this is a real topic worthy of, a serious look. It would be really nice once we get there, it'll be exciting to see, what other kinds of stories we can tell.
Yeah, for sure. And, we only got about 45 seconds, Dan, and we got a full hour left with you tonight. And I wish we had longer, but I will make it up and we will do a longer show at a later date, because I am looking at, on our YouTube channel, adding a Thursday afternoon show, which will be a little bit of a longer format. But we got a lot to cover. When we come back, Dan, you stirred up a little bit of controversy about Chris Rutkowski, not about the man, but about the information that he was getting. I thought this was a very telling story, and my sources in Ottawa stated that they were quite concerned about the story you wrote about that. We're going to talk about this with Daniel Otis, contributing journalist with Vice Magazine, here on Spaced Out Radio. Canada's role in ufology. Where is it? Where does it stand? We're going to jam a bunch of information into your heads over the next 60 minutes with Daniel Otis, and then John Hudson will join us for the next hour. After that, talking UFOs. We'll be back with more Spaced Out Radio here on the mighty SOR. Stay tuned. All right, just one quick thing I forgot to tell you earlier. Our audience on YouTube can hear us while we're on break.
Hi, everybody on YouTube.
All right. Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. All right. Hello, gorgeous Purpose and Grace. Good to have you back. And Chad Smith. Yeah. Just so you know, Chad, we need to make some Chad Smith t-shirts. More of them. We need to. It's just the way it is. We need to make those. More people need Chad Smith in their life. Jesse Peak, how you doing, man? Good to have you back. Oh, they got the guy off the roof yet, or what?
Let me peek out the window here. Yeah, the sirens aren't flashing anymore. Maybe they did.
That wouldn't be Toronto Maple Leaf blue on the walls, would it?
We were going for sort of like a chill Greek vibe in our living room here.
Very nice. Very nice. Rock the Gaspar, what is up? There he is. Rock the Gaspar, right there. Yes, man. This is good stuff. This is good stuff. I am so happy you're here, man. I have been looking forward to this one for a while. I really have.
Me too. This is good. I think that energy drink I had is really jolting me right now.
Yeah. I'm on water. That's all right. My waistline is going down. That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
I have a 6-year-old, so I usually try to go to bed early because she wakes up early.
My 8-year-old today, he's been going through some major growing pains in his knees. And the poor kid, he is just, come nighttime around, like right before bed, he is in such pain. So it's quickly a hot bath with Epsom salts and get him to raise his legs and Advil and a hot pad under his knees. And I just feel so bad for him right now.
Poor dude.
So bad for him. But he will not give up hockey. He loves his hockey. And he will not give up his guitar lessons.
Someone asked if I have more info on a Lake Ontario UFO. I got info on lots of Lake Ontario sightings. Is there one in particular you're referring to?
No idea. That Lake Ontario is a weird place, man.
I love it. The beaches are fantastic. Come summertime, you know.
Can't go there. I can't go there. I get bloody hives every time I'm in Toronto, man, because all the Maple Leaf fans and Blue Jay fans just drive me nuts. Drive me nuts.
Yeah, well, we're not really. We're more Raptors fans in this house than anything.
I hate the NBA too.
What don't you hate, Dave?
No, I'll tell you why, though. Because the NBA and Michael Heisler screwed Vancouver. Michael Heisley.
Oh, yeah.
They screwed Vancouver big time. And when that asshole Heisley came out on the court after buying the team to keep it in Vancouver and started singing the Canadian national anthem, and then 2 weeks later announced he was moving the fucking team, okay, I figured, you know what, screw you, NBA, and screw you, Michael Heisley, and I've never watched a game of the NBA since. That's 20 years now. 20 years.
Oh, wow. Oh, it was pretty exciting here when the Raptors were winning.
Oh, yeah.
G West. See the Porter plane. Yeah. I've found a bit on that, and that's going to be included in the story that's coming out that I'm working on right now.
Yeah. All right. Body Technician, good morning to you. Ann B, welcome back to the show. Appreciate you. And no. I will not be careful about my digs on Toronto sports. I will not be careful. You know, but
it's easy. It's pretty easy sport to make fun of Toronto teams.
Absolutely, especially when you live in the West and all you get is Maple Leaf this, Maple Leaf that. Hi, gorgeous Jessica McCreary. I want to say a big thank you to Double Tim, Ed, Thomas, Snakes, and Cat for the amazing super chats tonight. The super chat is a great way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. And we really appreciate the support. Thank you to all the veterans tuning on in. You always have a safe home here with Spaced Out Radio in our chat rooms. And to all our regular listeners, you guys make it so much fun. Here we go with the second half hour. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate it. I want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot, reading Shirky Poo's Newswire, and checking out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and our new channel on TikTok. We haven't got any videos yet. That's coming soon. I got to make sure my mug looks okay for that, and it is at Spaced Out Radio. Let's go back to Daniel Otis. He's a contributing journalist for Vice Magazine who's really on top about it when it comes to UFOs in Canada. And recently, Daniel wrote an incredible story about researcher Chris Rutkowski out of Manitoba. And the fascinating, and I would say the detrimental part about this was that the Canadian military has been handing Chris Rutkowski UFO reports Well, some people who have filed Freedom of Information requests for that same information have been denied. And Daniel, how did you get this story?
It was a bit of a long process. So I guess I started looking into this angle probably a good 3 or so months before the story was published. How I first started asking questions on this was I had been asking Canada's Department of Defense numerous questions about their handling of specific reports. And in one or two instances, they told me, they referred me to Chris Rakowski for more information. And I asked why, and they said, well, this report was sent to him. Like they told me explicitly. So just as background, for those who don't know, Chris Rakowski is a Winnipeg-based ufologist and science writer. He's been on the topic for more than 3 decades. He produces and oversees an annual survey of Canadian UFO sightings that has documented some tens of thousands of cases over the past couple of decades. So, they told me this, but it wasn't really enough, for a story. I'd asked Chris about it, and, he did provide some responses. But, how the story really broke open for me was in my research into a specific aviation incident. This was a 2018 cargo flight over the Northwest Territories that reported seeing something flying, quote, sporadically and traveling at speeds of between Mach 4 and Mach 5, which is, faster than any known manned aircraft, although, hypersonic weapons can probably hit those kinds of speeds. Anyways, they filed this report, and I obtained Air Force documents on it, and the Air Force documents referenced a procedural checklist called CL-213. So as soon as I saw that there was a UFO-related procedural checklist being mentioned in an official Air Force documents, of course, I filed the Freedom of Information request to obtain that. And in that document, I think it's sitting here on my desk somewhere. In that document, it basically outlines what Air Force procedures are in the case of UFO reports. And the procedural document says if this was from one Canadian Air Division, which is the Royal Canadian Air Force's command hub. And the document basically says if you get a UFO report, notify civilian air traffic controllers, because obviously they should be aware, and then refer the reporter or the reportee to Chris Rakowski. And there it was, so there it was in paper that this was actually a formalized procedure. Now that document said that sightings were to be referred to him, as though if someone called the Air Force Command hub with a UFO report, they'd say, here's Chris's contact info. You can get in touch with him. But, through my research, it also came out that Chris was also, for a span of 20 years, receiving reports directly from at least 5 Canadian military bases from, Western Canada to Eastern Canada, across the whole country. And in addition to that, he was receiving reports directly from Transport Canada, which is the Canadian government's transportation department. And so he was, for a long period of time, he was, for 20 years, he was getting these reports directly. It was initially an informal agreement that was based on a telephone conversation, as he explains it. And he said he received them up until this year, and that this year it stopped once this whole story, the UAP story became, much more widespread in the media. That source, he says, dried up a bit for him, which is unfortunate. It's such a weird situation, because I think it's if Chris hadn't made this arrangement to receive these documents, they could potentially have been hidden from the Canadian public forever. As you mentioned, people have been filing Freedom of Information requests to obtain this kind of stuff and been coming back with absolutely, nothing, nil responses. So it's great that Chris has it, but I think, some people, this story rubbed them the wrong way. And I think perhaps it had to do with the exclusivity of it. I think we've reached a sort of new era and understanding, I'd hope, on the UFO issue. And, it's better that Chris gets this stuff than nobody. But, it would be great if instead of stopping sending this stuff to him, which is a really bad outcome, if that perhaps, if Canada doesn't see this as a national security issue, which they clearly don't based on, the information I've been finding, that it would be great if there could at least be some sort of formalized way in which reports of this nature could be given to serious researchers. As it stands now, if you want to research this topic, the two main avenues are filing access to information requests or, sending an email to Chris and asking him if he has any records on the cases you're looking into. That's something I've been doing, and Chris has been incredibly helpful in opening up his files and records to, provide things like intelligence reports on UFO sightings for cases that I'm investigating. But it's, that was, that's what that story was about.
There were a couple of instances in there, and I don't blame Chris Rutkowski at all. He happened to be in the right place at the right time, and why not take the information if the government and the military is going to handle it to you? But what I don't like about it, and from talking to my own sources in Ottawa, all right, the one thing that I had talked to them about and that they were showing concern about was the fact that even people within Ottawa had put out FOIA requests for information and were getting denied. And some of those reports ended up on Chris Rutkowski's desk. That was a major concern for them. And I know other researchers in Canada who have been denied FOIA requests regarding UFO sightings and UFO reports and information, and they have come to a dead end as well. But they end up on Chris Rutkowski's desk because that's the handshake agreement that was made. But I don't understand this level of two-faced interfacing here where the public who is doing it the proper way by filing the request is being denied, yet the Canadian military is just saying, here, Mr. Rutkowski, here you go. And once again, that isn't a shot at Chris. At least the information is getting out there and Chris is doing something with it. But you can't give to one when you're not giving to the other.
Well, I don't necessarily see anything, evil or nefarious going on there. The inherent problem with the access to information request system in Canada is that it's up to individual humans. And, unless you're giving them really, really specific instructions on what you want to find, you're not going to get results. I've had cases where I've filed things that I know something exists and it's come back negative. But I've also, in my experience, found that, if you get really into the nitty gritty of the procedures and how it works, and you can say, I want this type of report number from this specific Air Force squadron from this specific date, you get what you're looking for, and often quite quickly. It is frustrating, I think, for anyone who wants to research this subject that that they can be denied data when another individual has it and possesses it. The way it stands now, my advice is, reach out. I've reached out, and Chris has indicated that he's, happy to discuss the matter with serious researchers on the topic. And I have a lot of respect for him and his long-standing work. When he got into this, 30 years ago, this wasn't the sort of the topic didn't have the same degree of widespread acceptance as it does now, I believe. And he was openly tackling a taboo topic in a serious academic manner. And when the government decided it no longer wanted to collect these reports themselves, he was in the right place at the right time, and it was well deserved. How do we move forward? What happens now? I frankly don't know. As I mentioned before, Chris says that he's not getting this stuff anymore because of all the widespread media attention, which is unfortunate. It means that those who are researching this topic have to push that much harder through access to information, freedom of information requests. And the other option is write your members of parliament. I was speaking to somebody in Ottawa who said that MP offices they don't receive any letters on the subject. In the United States, there's been a lot of real organized, concerted efforts to have letter writing campaigns to members of Congress, to senators. That's not happening in Canada. So if you're Canadian and you're listening and you want the government to handle these things differently, write your member of parliaments. As it stands now, the Canadian government and military, they document reports, they collect reports, but they don't act on them. Once it's determined that a sighting isn't something like a conventional threat, like a foreign fighter jet, official interest in Canada appears to end. Doesn't mean that reports aren't sent off to other places like NORAD in Colorado, but in terms of what's happening within our borders, there seems to be little interest. So my argument is, let's not push our military to make this a defense issue. If this were to become a defense issue in Canada, as it is in the United States, all data can thus be withheld from freedom of information requests on national security grounds. The Black Vault today just published something saying that their requests for documentation on official military UAP reports were all declined on national security grounds. We don't want that happening in Canada. Right now, you can file requests, and if you're specific, sometimes you can get stuff. My batting average, I'm pretty 50-50 on when I get returns, but that's something. I think if people are writing members of parliament, and I really urge people perhaps to do things like that, there needs to be more transparency that, this sort of data should be made available for.
At Capella University, you're in control of your education. With the game-changing FlexPath format, you can set your own deadlines and move at your own pace. The faster you move, the more you save. Visit capella.edu to learn more.
Hate crimes are dangerous and insidious, but you have the power to help stop them. If you witness or experience a hate crime, a criminal offense motivated by race, religion, disability, sexual orientation, or other characteristics, you can report it to the FBI, who is committed to protecting communities and supporting victims. Submit a tip at 800-CALL-FBI or tips.fbi.gov. The FBI is here to help, protecting our communities together. Report hate crimes.
Those who want to investigate it. Plain and simple. If it's not a national security issue, then of course Chris should have access to this.
Absolutely.
And of course should all other researchers who want to look into this in a serious way.
Let's stick with Ottawa for a second here, because this plays a very, very big role. Now, I have been privy to sources telling me that when former ambassador to the United States, David McNaughton, was read into this project, and then that meeting had McNaughton flown to Ottawa, where he debriefed Prime Minister Trudeau and Defense Minister Harjit Sajjan on the UAP phenomena and what was going on. Now, I'm not going to give my sources out to who told me that, but they're pretty reputable in knowing what is going on. Why have we not heard the Prime Minister or the Defense Minister speak out about this topic?
I mean, why would they? They're elected officials. And I think from their perspective, there's no political capital in speaking about this issue. In Canada, if you are an elected official speaking openly about, the UFOs, you're perceived probably as being a little bit wacky. And if people are taking you seriously, then the implications of you speaking out about it are that you want to dedicate taxpayer funds to UFO research when, there's how many communities in this country that don't have, fresh drinking water? You know what I mean? It's such a delicate balance. I think perhaps in Canada, more work needs to be done behind the scenes to encourage transparency with the data. And I think the other thing that we encounter in Canada compared to the United States is party discipline in Ottawa is incredibly strict. In the US, you'll have people within the Democrat and Republican Party disagreeing with each other publicly, voting with or against each other. They don't always follow party lines. In Canada, it's not like that at all. When you have votes in Parliament, it's always on party lines. Individual parliamentarians seldom raise their voice, and if they do, it's definitely not going to be something controversial that that hasn't been authorized by up high. We just have a very conservative political environment that doesn't encourage independent voices like there are in the United States. And it's, that's probably a problem with our democracy. And it's frankly exciting to see in the United States that you have people, Democrats, Republicans, people on all sides of the aisle taking this up as a bipartisan issue that's worth serious, further looking.
And that's true. There's not a lot of free votes within the parliamentary system in Ottawa. But I have talked to my sources in Ottawa here, and I know that this topic behind the scenes, outside of the cameras and outside of open doors, they are talking about this subject. Why haven't we seen any of the opposition parties really tackle this story, even though we know that this story is being talked about behind closed doors?
I've heard much the same as you, that this is a topic that is being discussed behind closed doors in both the two major political parties in Canada. Why is no one making a public stand? I think it really goes back to what I was saying earlier about just nobody wanting to jump outside of party lines. I think the only way you could see a politician in Canada coming out publicly is if, one, they received authorization from their leader, or two, they were a total maverick who just, didn't care what the leader thought about them. And outside of that, I'm not sure you're going to see anyone stand up. But, hopefully that'll change. I think, shows like yours, continued coverage like mine, all the other good work that's being done out there on the subject is helping. And the fact that at the very least, American data is making its way into mainstream Canadian news, at least that's helpful in raising awareness and, getting people in Ottawa to be interested. But, it would be nice if we could have our Bill Nelson or our Marco Rubio who would, take a stand in Canada and, publicly declare, hey, let's be serious about this. It would be very welcome. But I don't know. I don't see that happening anytime incredibly soon. But it's something I'm working on hopefully making happen as well.
Yeah, me too. And the funny part about it is, I think it's kind of ignorant that the opposition parties haven't brought it up. I even brought that up to my sources, especially after in the House of Lords over in the United Kingdom, there was a 2-hour debate about UAPs after the American DNI report came out. And I said to my sources in Ottawa, I said, you had a perfect opportunity in question period to sneak in a question or two about this topic, and you guys chickened out. You chickened out. Britain had just done it. The Americans had just done it, and you chickened out. I said, you dropped the ball, as per usual. And I said, I said, and my source agreed with me. My source agreed with me that they probably couldn't have done it. But once again, it goes right back to what you were saying, Daniel, that if the big man on campus, which is the party leader, doesn't give the thumbs up to it, it doesn't happen. And if you look at all three parties, they all have people with military backgrounds in very high up positions.
Yeah, they do. I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion on whether or not that was a missed opportunity. I mean, from their perspective as well, this was an election year in Canada. And I'm sure the opposition party in the lead up to an election, of course, didn't want the headlines to be dominated by their newfound interest in, flying objects in the sky. Perhaps now, perhaps maybe there's opportunities now. We have every indication to believe we're not going to have another election in Canada for hopefully another 2 years, at least, with another minority government. So, the time's now. Work those sources. Make them talk, Dave.
I'm trying, and I know you were trying, but do you get frustrated by that? Knowing that you have this information, those conversations are happening, because I know I'm frustrated by it because you don't have that. Go ahead.
Just to answer your frustration, I've filed, you mentioned alleged meetings with Canada's former ambassador to the United States, I filed several access to information requests on that subject, all of which have come back with no records found. So, I was very specific about certain terms to be used in certain emails between certain people on certain dates. Nothing. I'm trying. I haven't given up.
Maybe we just got to keep tweeting. Maybe that's the way to do it. We need UFO Twitter Canada. There'll be about 14 of us. That's it. But that's okay.
You know what? For me, frankly, I think the thing to do is to just, keep working, keep doing what we're doing. In my case, that's trying to find new data, trying to find procedures, trying to find the nuts and bolts documents from our military and our governments that show that there is a paper trail, that credible people do see these things. Frankly, I'm not too disturbed by the lack of, politicians speaking openly about this in Canada. While I'd like it to happen, I don't think it's necessary. Because I'm also afraid that the dominant narrative in this subject is the so-called threat narrative, that this phenomenon should be treated as a potential threat. And the Canadian Air Force has clearly decided that that's not the case for them, or at least in most cases. If they change their mind and treat all instances of UAP as potential threats, then suddenly people who actually want to research the subject in Canada are going to have the access to information door closed in their face. So, getting more political involvement and getting more involvement in Ottawa is potentially a double-edged sword for research. If our military starts behaving like the Pentagon, suddenly citizens and civilians who are interested in the topic are going to be completely shut out from being able to obtain any official data. So it's like we have to tread lightly. Yes, I want politicians in Canada to speak out. And also I'm like, if they do, there's some pretty bad implications for those who really want to dig into this topic.
We got about 45 seconds to go, and we may have to carry this one over to the next break. But at any point, have you or your sources been told that the reason why Canada has been so silent is a directive from the United States and their role with NORAD?
I've never heard anything to that effect.
Are you surprised?
Have you?
No, I wish I had, because that's a big question that I do have, is what is the pull on NORAD? And that's a big one for us. Well,
there's, every indication that Canada sends reports to NORAD in Colorado. I've found emails about, alleged UFO sightings where, people at Peterson Space Force Base, then it was Air Force Base in the email, which is a NORAD affiliated facility in Colorado. They were being sent reports from Canada. So
wow.
I think there's definitely threads to pull in terms of what's happening in Colorado with NORAD. For those who don't know, NORAD is the joint Canada-U.S. Air Defense Pact.
Let's hold on right there. We only have Daniel Otis for another 30 minutes here on Spaced Out Radio. Great interview so far. UFOs in Canada. What's happening? What's the big news? Where's it going? We'll find out more with Daniel right after the break in hour 2. Flying by here, buddy. Flying by.
Yeah, good times.
Mm-hmm.
So far, so good for you, Dave?
Perfect. The only disappointment is I only got you for 90.
We'll do it again. I like the idea of your Thursday thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's you'll get me even sharper if you talk to me in the afternoon.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Hey, want to hear something crazy?
Love to.
Did you see the story I did on the Department of Defense flight that was on its way to pick up people in Afghanistan that saw some sort of green glowing object?
No, I missed that. Fill me in.
So that was in July of this year. A Canadian defense plane on its way to Afghanistan and a Dutch KLM flight flying parallel from Boston to Amsterdam both saw a glowing green object. So this report was made public in Transport Canada's aviation incident database, and they took it down. It was up for like a month, and then they took it down.
Man,
I asked them, hey, what's going on here? They say they're editing it.
I had something weird happen today.
What's that?
So I was at my daytime job. I was like, this honestly tripped me out a little bit. I was walking from my office, getting ready to finish the day, and I had my son there with me. And so I was taking his empty iced tea bottle to our recycling bin. And I have to pass the bathrooms. And the first bathroom that I have to pass is the men's bathroom. I saw the men's door open up, and I'm only about 6 feet away from this. I saw the men's bathroom door open up, the light turn off, door open, wide open, and nobody came out.
Weird.
Yeah. And I just stood there, and I'm like, did I just see what I just saw? Right? And I stood there, and I'm like, what the hell is this going on, man? And it's only a one-stall bathroom. Like, there's only one toilet in there and one sink. You know, I mean, it's not like one of these, bigger bathrooms where there's, multiple stalls or anything like that.
Wait, so ghosts got to go too?
I guess so. I don't get that. Yeah.
Spectral urination.
I don't know what the hell it was, but apparently ghost poop is a thing now.
Someone in the chat asked if I was a spy. No, I am not a spy.
You're not a spy?
I guess, is that flattering if somebody thinks you're a spy?
Oh, I had that a long time ago. That was fun.
No. I would like a spy salary.
So would I. You know what? I told my sources point blank, I can be bought. I said, if there's a UFO job somewhere within CSIS or the Canadian government, I can be bought to end this show very easily to go work on the Woo. I can. Kaiju and Zero Cool, how you doing, guys? VPXM, good to see you, buddy. Been a while. Nice to have you back. And what's Millennium saying? What if the reason Trudeau traveled to Tofino and missed the first day of national reconciliation was to meet secretly about the UFO topic? No, he's too stupid. He's too stupid. Surfing, you have to realize, he is the most important thing about Canada. That's all I'm going to say. He is the most important thing. When he looks at Canada, he says, how good am I for this country? And Toronto boy here is not going to say anything because his entire city voted for him. And I live in the boonies, so we went a different way. But that's okay. Justin Trudeau does not have a Chad Smith t-shirt. That's the biggest issue that he has right now. He needs a Chad Smith t-shirt.
You can send him one, eh? You got the address.
Oh, yeah.
He's in public housing.
Technically, he is in public housing. Oh, my God. I was talking to one of my Toronto buddies. I was giving him a shot. I'm like, you vote for him. You voted for him. And he's like, dude, I didn't vote for anybody. What were the choices? Slim, none, or zero? Yeah.
I've politically in elections, I've dabbled a little all over the place. For me, it's usually who is the candidate in my riding, who's the person I respect the most, who's the person that's going to get stuff done, who is the person with the most integrity. And I've found that's been different people from different parties as the years have gone by.
I think we need a Chad Smith t-shirt of him jumping the shark, much like Fonzie. That's what we need. Chad Smith versus the shark. We got about 1 minute, Dan.
All good. I'm scrolling through the comments. Anything else? What do I think it all is? I think it's probably 1,000 different things.
Yeah.
Most ordinary. Maybe some not.
Hi, Noble Patrick. Good to see you. All right, I want to say a big thank you to Rex, Todd, Cat Chaser, Snakes, Thomas, Ed, and Tim for the amazing super chats. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis, so thank you very much for the love and support. Thank you to all the veterans tune in. Don't forget to do some shopping on our store and our website, and here we go with the second hour.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Second hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Thank you to everyone tuning us in on our terrestrial affiliates across North America and digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Dapocagnius. I got that so wrong. Dapocagnius. Dapocagnius? Whatever it is, the Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot, reading up on Shirky Poo's Newswire, and checking out our swag as well. Follow us on our new channel on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio, at Spaced Out Radio on Twitter, and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. For the final time, we introduce Daniel Otis. He is a contributing journalist of Vice Magazine and Vice Online. Great journalist who's really been hammering home the Canadian side of ufology. And Daniel, we welcome you back right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
All right. We got to make a go here. We got to get a lot of information in the next 20 minutes here before we got to say goodnight to you. But I want you to tell us in regards to the sightings that people are seeing in Canada, what is being reported. You have mentioned, a few sightings that the military has had along with civilians. Is this happening often?
Yeah, in a sense. So most of my research, if you include civilian sightings, based on the work that ufologist Chris Rakowski does, there's sightings happening all the time. My research initially began by looking into aviation sightings. So, sightings by pilots on major airlines. And by going back about 20 years, I was able to find close to 200 anomalous reports in the Canadian government's aviation incident database. Now, this database is called CADORS. It's the acronym CADORS, and it contains things, bird strikes, mechanical failures, engine issues, you name it. If there's an incident, it's logged in the system. So by combing through thousands of reports, I was able to find, approximately 200 that had been labeled as being, UFO cases. And of that number, there was about, a dozen or so that were highly anomalous. So if you're looking at that sort of math, it means, can you do math on the fly? But it basically means that, there's a pilot reporting something weird every month or two in Canada, going back the past 20 years. And these are reports from major airlines as well as, small private aircraft. And the major airlines have included Air Canada, WestJet, Porter Airlines, Delta, Qatar Airways. There's been cargo flights. There's been Canadian military planes. Just in late July of this year, a Canadian Department of Defense flight on its way to...
The following is a commercial message.
Hi, Kevin O'Leary here from Shark Tank and Beanstalk's chairman and co-owner. If you'd like to invest with me in a new fintech business, listen to this. Over 100 million Americans have no investment account. So we built Beanstalks to make investing easy and automated and to have a real impact. We then launched a crowdfunding so people can invest with me in the Beanstalks business with as little as $250. Check our website for links to the crowdfunding info. BEANSTOX.
Beanstalks is an SEC-registered internet-based investment advisor. Investing in securities involves risks and potential for loss. Before investing, consider your risk tolerance and investment objectives. For more details, see our website at www.beanstocks.com. Investments in securities are not FDIC insured. Kevin O'Leary is a strategic advisor and paid spokesperson for Start Engine, which owns the funding portal hosting the offering.
Ya llegó Black Friday a JCPenney y llegó con nuevas ofertas de Black Friday de viernes a domingo, como ropa Champion para la familia con hasta 40% de descuento y hasta 75% de descuento en toda la joyería fina. Todas estas ofertas y muchas más terminan el domingo. ¡Feliz Black Friday! JCPenney. Ofertas válidas en selección de artículos del 12 al 14 de noviembre. Aplican exclusiones. Los cupones no le aplican a Champion. Detalles en la tienda jcp.com.
Pick up at-risk personnel from Afghanistan, as well as a Dutch KLM flight from Boston to Amsterdam, were flying parallel near the island of Newfoundland in the Gulf of the St. Lawrence, and they both observed a glowing green object and reported it. So just that was in July of this year, involving defense aircraft. So these reports are happening in Canadian airspace. Even more frequently, citizens are logging reports, and also peppered through the records, there's also reports from police officers. Just this recently, I did a story about a 2011 report from a Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer in about near Winnipeg, Manitoba, who saw an unusual light, recorded it with his dash cam, and then submitted that as evidence to Canadian transportation officials. In my research, I found the parts that weren't mentioned in the story was that there is another case involving RCMP officers in the exact same town in both 2017 and in 1967. And the one from 1967 was weirder. So these reports are happening, and going back into Canadian archives, I found reports from the dawn of the Cold War era, and I'm talking about reports from Air Force personnel and military personnel, going right up until this year.
That's incredible. RCMP have played a big role, and one of the things that tipped me off was talking to an RCMP officer and later having it confirmed by a dispatcher that even though they don't talk UFOs, the minute a UFO report comes onto a staff sergeant's desk after being called in, they have to immediately deal with it, which means that information gets sent to Ottawa, which immediately gets sent to NORAD in the United States, where the two closest CF-18 Hornets are triangulated to that area to try and intercept the craft. Have you heard anything about this?
The RCMP angle isn't one that I've focused on wholeheartedly. I focus on reports filed by RCMP officers, but in terms of reports filed to the RCMP, that's something I haven't looked into as much, mostly because just in my, trying to push these stories into, mainstream media through an outlet like Vice, it's, I'm still on the uphill battle of trying to get people to accept the fundamental veracity and authenticity of these reports. So, talking about citizen reports to the RCMP isn't something I've delved into, but there's so much unexplored potential there. For those who don't know, throughout most of Canada, and particularly in remote communities, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, which we often call the Mounties, it's a federal police force, and they're pretty much the only police force in large swaths of remote parts of Canada, right? So it stands to reason that if somebody sees something weird and they live in a remote community, the first people they're probably going to report it to is the RCMP. So, there's so much potential there for digging into the subject.
How do we start to get these people to talk? Because Canada always has had this rule that if we don't talk about it, it doesn't exist. It doesn't matter whether it's our parents. It doesn't matter whether it's our teachers, our police officers, our government officials. If we don't talk about it, the topic does not matter and does not exist. How do we break that old cycle?
Well, I think it's beginning to break. I think it's thawing. Some of my stories have included on the record interviews. A story I wrote on documenting Canadian military's history of filing reports included on the record testimony from if my memory serves me correctly, he achieved the rank of lieutenant colonel during his career. So, people are coming out of the woodwork slowly but surely, but, it's still, there's a lot of work to be done. And I think, I have to, as a journalist, prove to people, one, I'm going to respect their identities if they, choose to change their mind or choose to be anonymous. Two, and you have to demonstrate a track record of handling the subject in a way that's, that's respectful and sensitive to those who've had these kinds of experiences. I'm working on material that does involve some on-the-record interviews, with people. I've already done on the military. I've spoken to an RCMP officer who had a sighting, for actually the sighting that I mentioned that I published a story about an RCMP officer who saw something in 2011. After the story was published, I spoke to him, on the record, and something based on that. You can expect me to do something with that very, very soon. And he's willing to talk about it, and I think we just have to keep pushing. It will change. I think once there's a sort of more widespread paradigm shift whereby most people accept that this is, a real topic, then I think you're going to start to see more people coming out of the woodwork. And it's happening right now. Look at the U.S. Navy pilots who've come out and gone on the record some years after their experiences sometimes. I think the stage is currently being set. I'm optimistic more people are going to be coming forward very soon.
Well, that leads to my next question. Does Canada need its own David Fravor, the American fighter pilot who was the first one to intercept a Tic Tac? Do we need that Canadian CF-18 pilot, whether it's from 409 Squadron or 410 or 425 out of Quebec? Do we need one of them to come out and say, this is what I saw? Because that could open up the entire Pandora's box.
Yeah, and I think somebody like that would really help legitimize the topic, for people in Ottawa, especially if you were hypothetically to have a Canadian military aviator who said, I was outmaneuvered by something unusual. That would be, a phenomenal story. There's, the historical record from the Cold War era, shows cases of that nature. I've heard rumors of that effect from, more modern periods involving the Canadian Air Force, but there's nothing I personally have been able to substantiate. If I ever found even the smallest scrap of evidence that something of that nature occurred, you can trust that I would run with it and do a story. But it's, does that Canadian even exist? I don't know. I've heard in the rumor mill that they do, and if they do exist, you've got my email address, or give Dave a call. But Canada would love to hear from you.
Couple questions from our audience, because I want to put it out there too. If any fighter pilot in Canada, currently or previous, over the last 30, 40 years, has intercepted a UFO, give us a ring. Get a hold of us, because your story needs to be told, and we can't say enough about that. But a couple questions from our audience. One was asking, do we have a lot of UFO crash sites here? Have you heard of any?
Yes, in the historical record, but again, nothing completely conclusive in my eyes. I saw that within the Canadian, I previously mentioned that there's this big government historical archive run by Library and Archives Canada of old UFO reports. And those did include some RCMP investigations of space debris, but it was inconclusive. All evidence appeared that it was pretty conventional, the sort of things you expect to fall out of the sky. Is there a Canadian Roswell? I don't know. I don't know. But if there is, I'd like to hear about it too.
Does Canada have its own Area 51?
Again, the big difference, one of the big differences with Canada and the United States is, our military doesn't invest as heavily into developing future technologies. We're a country that, with some exceptions, with some very notable exceptions, but by and large, advanced military equipment is, purchased from other countries like the United States. So do we have an Area 51 that has, perhaps experimental aircraft or exotic materials? Not that I know of. I've heard people refer to CFB Cold Lake, which is a base in northern Alberta. That's our big oil producing province here. I've heard people refer to that as our Area 51, and there is a record of a couple anomalous sightings from that region, but we don't have this sort of legendary sites in Canada outside, I guess, of Falcon Lake, Manitoba, which and Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia, which both were famous cases. I think they're both from 1967. Is that right, Dave?
Yes. Well, there was the one a few years ago that happened in winter just north of Lake Winnipeg, where there was an alleged UFO crash into the lake, and the military went, and this was on a reserve, and the military went racing over there, and the early reports was it was a UFO, something weird happened, and then all of a sudden, nothing. The military stated that they were doing a training exercise. The people who were claiming that it was a UFO said, oh, it wasn't. We made a mistake. I mean, I believe this was 5-6 years ago.
Well, and on a similar note, I have actually a document obtained through Access to Information request. This is a 2018 email. This is from the Canadian Air Force's Rescue Operations Center in Halifax, and it's an email that says that they were a concerned citizen saw something fall in the water and could neither confirm nor deny having a person on board. And then a search and rescue helicopter was sent out to do a search of the area. They conducted a search of the area with nothing seen. And the subject of the email has the words UFO sighting in it. So a citizen saw basically a UFO go into the ocean near Prince Edward Island, called 911, who notified search and rescue, the Air Force's search and rescue teams, which went to go check out what was happening out there and then saw nothing. So they do respond to things like this.
That is interesting. Do you think we are keeping... let me rephrase that. The Canadian military is keeping the secrets of this because of the close ties and partnership with the United States?
Perhaps. I don't know. I don't want to editorialize on that. In my dealings, I actually find I've been dealing a lot with the Public Affairs Office for the Air Force in Canada, and I actually find them to be relatively transparent. If I ask them a direct question, I get a direct response from them. The same can't necessarily be said for other parts of the Canadian government, but their statement is Canada, the Canadian military, does not concern itself with UFO reports unless they represent a real or credible threat or search and rescue. And so this was a case where somebody's, what I just mentioned, somebody saw something go into the ocean. So it was potential search and rescue. So they went out, saw nothing, and it was case closed. And there are cases where Canadian military personnel see things that are genuinely weird. But the Air Force says, yes, we believe they saw what they saw. We logged the report, we filed it away, we notified the relevant people. But as far as we're concerned, this is outside of our mandate. Our mandate's to deal with, credible threats, like other countries and, glowing objects in the sky. As far as the Canadian perspective is that's not considered a credible threat. And the official records, everything I've been able to uncover through, the Freedom of Information requests, the interviews I've done behind the scenes that I can never publish, everything indicates that there is no suppressed UFO program in Canada. And that if any real work is being done on some of the more interesting Canadian sightings, it's probably being done in the United States, probably most likely by NORAD in Colorado, if it's being done. I have no indication to see that Canada has been really digging deep in a way like the UAP task force is doing in the United States.
That surprises me. And you buy that, considering that North American airspace is pretty much predominantly patrolled by U.S. aircraft?
I think that so are you asking me if I think that there's pressure being exerted by the United States to maintain Canadian silence? But that doesn't necessarily really make sense to me, because why would they be pressuring us to be silent on an issue that they're increasingly being outspoken in public about?
Well, no, I mean, they're being outspoken, but along a great narrative as well.
Well, yes, they are maintaining a specific narrative. I don't know, Dave. I honestly, I don't have a firm answer for that question. I can tell you my research does not indicate that that's happened. It doesn't mean it hasn't happened. My research shows that, though, that there is information sharing, that Canada does send reports off to the United States. The Air Force and my, dealings with the Public Affairs Office, they say that, intelligence reports that contain, alleged UFO sightings are shared. But, I don't have an answer for your question other than, what my research indicates to me. And what it indicates to me is that, at some point during the Cold War, the reports kept coming in. Canada and the United States created a reporting system to track these kinds of reports. And that at some point during the Cold War, Canadian military officials decided this isn't the Russians, so we're not so worried.
Well, I mean, we don't know if there's a worry or not just yet, my friend. We do not know. That is the big one that we do not know. We only have you for about 3 more minutes here. What is the big stories coming up regarding this topic and Canada and the Canadian government and the military?
Well, in terms of what you can expect from me, I think today I filed my 100th access to information request of the year. About 40 of them or so have been processed so far. More data is coming in, and I'm working on pieces that are going to provide a lot more detail and granularity about exactly how reports are handled. I've uncovered proof, for example, that the Canadian Air Force is checking radar data when air traffic controllers are telling them that, pilots on major airlines see something. So there's going to be some more granularity. There's more cases, and hopefully some, exclusive interviews, witness testimonies. Really just, I plan to keep on with what I'm doing, using declassified records to show that, yes, sightings of this nature happen. Yes, they're being filed by, credible people. And yes, the Canadian government and Air Force actually have reporting mechanisms whereby these reports are collected. Even though they're not investigated, at least they're being collected. So there are reporting mechanisms, there are reports, there is data. Let's work for more transparency for that.
No, I think that's great. As we got about 90 seconds to go here, my friend, I want to say a big thank you for coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight. It really does mean a lot to have you on here. I mean, we've talked on the phone numerous times here. We've shared some very private stories and information as well, and I'm very thankful that you're a high-quality journalist and someone who I believe, and I want our audience to know, that I trust in getting the proper story out there regarding this topic. I think you're doing it right. There's very few that are, Daniel, that are calling it down the middle and just presenting the facts. Good job on doing true journalism on this subject. You need to be commended.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the kind words. It shows the work's not in vain. If you just stick to what's in the official records, it's compelling. It's so compelling. And, that's what I've been doing, and that's what I'll continue to do. And thank you. Your show's great, and I'm really glad we finally made this happen. Let's do it again.
Absolutely. Quickly, where can people find your work?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at DSOtis. I have a personal website, www.danielotis.ca. There's links there to all of my UAP reporting, as well as links to stories I've did before. I've been working as a journalist for about a decade. So actually, the UAP stuff, which has really gripped me, it's a small drop in my output. So if you're curious, you can find me there. And And also Twitter, especially, I'm often posting documents and tidbits of information that don't make it into my stories. So it's a good place if you want to get a little more detail on some of the things I'm reporting on.
All right, Daniel Otis, everybody. Coming up next, we're going to be joined by the fedora-wearing John Hudson from the Unbiased UFO Report and from the Experiencer Support Association. Ryan Stacy will join us as well as we continue the UFO talk on Spaced Out Radio next. Stay tuned. Great job, buddy. Great job.
Thanks, man.
No problem. No problem.
Yeah?
I appreciate that, brother. That was phenomenal.
I always got to remember I got to explain Canadian things because we're not always kilometers, places. What's the RCMP?
No worries, buddy.
That's one thing I'm always forgetting.
These Americans tuned in. I've kind of warmed them up for you.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Let's do it again sometime.
We will. Promise you. Take care.
All right. I'm going to bed. Take care. Good night.
Good night. All right. There is John Hudson. John, we're going to bring in Ryan Stacy here from the Experiencer Support Association as well. And and I think we'll have a good debate over the next hour, just about Ryan's shaving habits, which are terrible. And
I'd just like to say real quick, that guy was cool. That was a very interesting perspective. A really, really interesting perspective. I like that.
A true down the middle journalistic perspective, which if we could get more Daniel Otises covering this story, we'd be better off and probably further ahead.
What's funny is that it's still so rare. It won't be. Someday it won't be. But today it's still so rare that when you see this guy do it right, it looks weird. You're like, wait, I don't see that very often. Oh, that's the right way to do it. Yeah, that was cool.
Very nice.
Very interesting perspective.
Very nice. Excellent. I don't understand. No. We're good. All right. Close that out. Go like this. Come on, Ryan. Hurry up. We're waiting for you.
Introducing Peacock, the new free streaming service from NBC Universal. It's hit movies, current shows, live sports, trending bits, and timeless hits. And that's why you can't not watch. Peacock. Watch for free. Upgrade for more. Stream now at peacocktv.com. Law & Order SVU streaming now.
Unexpected trouble? CashNet USA can take the stress out of borrowing emergency funds. Our fast, secure application process makes it easy to apply online 24/7. Plus, CashNet USA offers same-day funding if approved before 10:30 a.m. Central Time, Monday through Friday. Additional terms may apply. Visit cashnetusa.com or tap the banner to apply today.
Maybe if we all focus.
We're all waiting for you, Ryan. There he is. Turn some lights on.
Lighting it.
You're not the shadow man from Deal or No Deal.
Is this some kind of competition? I can go darker.
I'm trying. Hold on here.
Holy cow, there he is, people. Look at that. My grandmother has more chin hair than you.
Just give me a second. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, just give me a second. Hold on.
You need some headphones.
Okay, well, I'm going to run upstairs then. I wasn't expecting to do this live on the spot. So let me run upstairs and I'll be right back.
All right, hurry up.
Okay.
I find it interesting there's groups of people doing YouTube that some of them primarily only do canned shows. And some of them primarily only do live shows. And when it mixes, some people get it's just a funny different way of doing it.
I saw Ryan hop into our chat room, so I messaged him. like a couple minutes before the break.
Okay.
I'm like, hey, do you want to hop on with John and I? Hey, B. Hoff, how you doing, buddy? What's happening?
I gotcha.
I recorded a 1-minute video for Bumblefoot tonight to see how good my son is improving at his guitar lessons.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. You can get a hoodie like this by going to UFOgarage.com and check out Ben & Joe's high-quality selection of clothing. Nicola, you're absolutely right. Daniel Otis is a great journalist to have on our side. Great journalist. Hey, B. Hoff, you never have to feel blue and down, man. We always got your back here, brother. Always got your back. Even though you use a reverse headstock on your guitars, we're okay with that. River Dogma Pitbull, what's happening? Good to have you here, man. Yeah, don't forget, you get your Merle shirts and your Chad Smith shirts at spacedoutradio.com. All right.
Hey, Dave, I have like a really fundamental question while we're waiting here. Oh, there he is.
Hold on here. We only got about 18 seconds here. So thank you to Rex, Todd, Tim, Ed, Thomas, Snakes, and Kat for the amazing super chats. It's a great way to support what we do on this show. And stay tuned, guys. We're going to go here in 3 seconds. We passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. We really do appreciate it. Want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire. Follow us on and check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show, and on our TikTok channel, as we're just starting to grow that, at Spaced Out Radio as well. We are now joined by John Hudson from the Unbiased UFO Report, and from Tessacan.org, which is the Experiencer Support Association here in Canada, Ryan Stacy. You'll notice on YouTube and Twitch that Ryan hasn't shaved in about 6 years, which is very nice. He's been growing his mustache the last 4.5. You can barely see it, but we still love the guy around here. And thank you guys for joining us to continue this UFO talk. And Ryan, I want to start with you on this one, because you are somebody who has had FOIA requests denied by the Canadian government or the Canadian military or wherever you selected them and sent them to. What was it like for you to, find out that the Canadian military was just handing over reports freely to Chris Rutkowski?
Well, first of all, I don't believe I've been denied. They come back saying no record found. So in order for me to determine whether or not the ones I'm asking for are the same ones that Rutkowski has, would require me access to his archives. So I can't really confirm that. As far as how did I react when I found out, I knew all along. I knew since I started with MUFON. I've been chasing Rutkowski on the back end privately for a very, very long time. And part of my outing and all this other stuff with MUFON was because, they were protecting him and protecting all this stuff. So I gave all my information to Otis, excuse me, and to comment on his journalism is he validated it. He fact checked it. He looked into it, continued the story through. And then, and then he released it a few years later. So for me, this was validation because I've been chasing that rabbit for a long time.
Why do you think this subject is still so closed in Canadian Parliament, in the Canadian government, and the media?
I don't see. I look at it differently. For me, as a private investigator, okay, by trade, I'm looking at the evidence. Like they've already released the information. From my observation of what's been done in Canada, using Rutowski as an example, whether you like him or not, he's withheld information. He hasn't used the information to the best ability in which it could have been used. So what I'm doing on our website with Tessacan, excuse me, is I'm actually taking these documents, whether they come from Otis or they come from us, from whatever ones come up, or from the internet, anyone else that puts it on. Grant Cameron sometimes release some stuff, but I got to get back to the original source, get those original documents. I'm splitting it up into a timeline. I'm splitting it up to a visual evidence database so you can see proximity where these things are happening. I'm also pointing out points of interest. So on our website, you can see everyone that's mentioned, every location that's mentioned. So I'm splitting it up because I'm actually investigating it in terms of looking to see the patterns. So the pattern for me is, we request, we ask for it, we get a response. If they were hiding some stuff, then there would be no response at all. No one has been asking. They've been giving it to Chris. And Chris has been doing whatever he has been doing with it. Now, if he's been releasing it privately, then good for him. That works for his little circuit. But it's never been mentioned anytime he's been in the media. It's never been mentioned like all the other reporting agencies, such as MUFON and Tessa and everyone else that's put information in the surveys, have never been mentioned in mainstream media. He's a media guy, So the problem, I don't think, is the government. I think the government has been transparent. They gave the information. We don't have time for this. You're obviously interested in it. Do something with it. And then it was just a cash cow for him all these years. And then for me, what frustrates me is I'm playing catch up. When starting back from the beginning, and Otis is doing a tremendous amount of help because he's getting information that correlates with the stuff that I'm tracking, and I can let some of these paths go. I let him lead that perfect when it comes in, take it and get and add it to the database. So to me, Rutowski has always been nothing, a zero, a waste in ufology, as far as I'm concerned, based from an evidence point of view, because I'm frustrated that all that information was available and not used properly. And that's because I'm a private investigator and I look at evidence every single day. I prep for court. Like, we had so much time if this was done properly. That's kind of where I'm at. Wow. Okay, so we can officially put or take Chris Rutowski off your Christmas card list. Well, as an individual, like he's a night, not like you say too, like as the person, I mean, it's the intent, the integrity, all the things that he tried to do. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he tried the best that he could with what he knew and what he understood in a time period. Back in the day, he was also the only person that had the information. So he was on top of the freaking mountain. And he's been on the mountain for so long. And if anything, with that article, what Otis had done is he just leveled the playing field, because now Rutowski is sharing information. Rutowski is giving that information to Otis. Otis is bringing those stories out. That is what we need for disclosure. He's still not talking to me. He will not even though if I'm complimenting him, trying to hey, good job, thanks for doing these things finally after all these years, he's not going to invite me to his parties either. But that's not the point. The point is the information's now got out. It started with me. I gave the information to Otis, and then Otis broke the story. Now we're having a conversation, and that should be a team effort. Rutowski is still part of that. It's just logistically, he didn't handle it the way that, in my opinion, and in many others' opinions, of the way to do it. And then we don't know the handshake agreement. We don't know if that's even the truth. We still don't know if because he's a media guy, that maybe he was supposed to cover it up. Who knows? We don't know that. But now the story's out. We don't have to be mad. We know the jig is up, and we just get the information out, and then everybody can do something with it. Because I've also confirmed, and I'll say this for the first time too, and I wasn't expecting to be on here, I was just listening. But I have gotten confirmation that the Canadian Space Agency, who used to refer UFO reports to TESA, is no longer referring UFO reports to TESA because of the Rutowski incident. There's some backflow internally from that. The National Defense is telling us that we have to still request for it, and so all these other things. So from my understanding is they've stopped giving that information to Chris now. So and with Otis explaining the process in such a well articulate way on how to access the information, what we're doing, more people can do. What I want is when those documents come out is to share them with us, or at least tip me off so I can add that to the database, because with the timeline, I'm starting to see, it's not just like in 1952 Project, Magnet happened. It was like, and then it was like 4 days later, this event happened, or 2 days later, this event happened. And then 3 days later, the project was created. You start to see all these events in close proximity. Time is very important. We all know these events, but like if it happened within like a 7-year span, sure. But like those UFO reports, everything, and those are credible documents. Those are the best source documents. And of course, when we get our civilian reports, I add them to the database too on the unidentified ones. We start to get more information too. Actually, like this book here behind me. The other thing was frustrating is that first document that Otis got, that service document that he found, was the document that I released in 2019. So it's right here in this book. And I gave that to Chris thinking, hey, man, this is something that you use, something that you need. Can you make this public because you have all that? And he didn't. And a year later, Otis found it, and that's how we got connected. I remember having a conversation with you. It was like, who the hell is this guy? That's my file, and you knew that. And then so that kind of goes to that. But just as an example, what I'm doing with these documents, sure, he's writing the story, but what I'm doing is I'm actually investigating it as far as I can go, assuming that the government gave me all the evidence that they have. And my perspective is they don't have time. Like Otis said, it's not a threat, but it also could be just they're just giving us a little bit and not looking into it. So when I do my investigative part, I'm coming to similar conclusions, but there are still things that can't be explained, like bright lights chasing objects, and chasing aircrafts.
All right, I want to bring John in here, the fedora-wearing John Hudson, in regards to this. As an outsider looking into, what is happening north of the border here, John, we see a little bit of a different game being played than what we see in the United States. A lot of closed-mindedness, a lot of conjecture going on. Do we really need to be talking about this topic in Canada? Yet in the United States, this is hot button. What do you see the big difference between the two countries?
Wow, but it's fascinating, and I don't want to hi everybody. I wouldn't want to insult our lovely neighbors up north, but when you get down to it, like the country of Canada has 42 million people.
Oh, you're generous. About 37.
About 37. Okay, California has, I believe, 46. Right, just the state of California. There's not actually a lot of people in Canada, and so I think honestly the complexity of services in a community is relational to how big the community is. And so even though you're next to a country that has a lot of these stuff implemented, it's because we have 300 million people, right? And so it's just that Canada's very spread out, and so essentially it's just kind of funny because you guys do this. It was a kind of a simple enough model that someone just said, "Oh, I'll do it," and they got the job. And you go to smaller and smaller villages in other parts of the world, and you'll see that same sort of structure happen, where it's not like a system; it's a guy. It's not a system; it's a person, right? That have those roles. And so it's kind of a throwback to an old older way of doing things, depending on how complex you are. And Chris just got lucky. Now, I mean, he could have been a more eager custodian. Right, like as custodian of that information, he could have had a more like super positive outlook, right? I mean, like, I'm not saying that, but he also could have shut down much more than he did, right? I mean, they really made him the focal point, and that was their doing, not his. I mean, he just stepped into the role. If he hadn't, someone else would have. And it's just I think it's just a factor of what happened. I think it's just unfortunate that he behaved that way, but arguably that's his choice, and there's a percentage of the population would probably do the same thing. So it's like neither here nor there, and it's like I don't know. It's just, I mean, it's all very interesting, but I don't really know. Yeah, I don't know. It's just it's a tough one, but wow, like what an odd experience.
You mentioned something that kind of jogged my brain too. Proximity is very important too. So like NORAD has two bases, one here in Ontario, but the first one is actually in Manitoba. So like he is the rep in that area. He's from Manitoba. So like he could have very well showed up and walked over to that place to make that deal. I've also, so part of this investigation process too is I did a Freedom of Information request on everything the government has on Rutowski. And Otis has that too, and only some of that was relevant for a story, but everything else just basically, like the explanation was this is what we're supposed to do, and all these other things too, and it's because he was at a government institution. He's a media guy for the University of Manitoba, so a government entity is passing information to another government employee. So there, you gotta look at the context. So that there is a lot of room to suggest that handshake agreement was like, yeah, we'll give it to you, but you keep it secret. And so because his career mandates it. He's a media guy, and that's the thing is when I knew the story, I knew the story for the whole time. But the problem was he's the guy in the media, so it took me to give. Actually, Dave Scott convinced me to trust Otis to give my leads to him. And I was very hesitant on that the whole way through. And then when the story finally came out, that's when I realized, like, you know what, that guy did a good job, because he also he got me validation, but he also didn't hang Rutowski so much that he's still able to keep his job. Right. So if it was me who wrote that article, he'd be out of a job right now. So it's kind of good to have that objective, that approach, but that's still, I don't know. I'm trying to trust him.
It's kind of a bummer, but it's not. It's like I don't think there was anything. I don't think there was anything malicious that went on. I think just there was differences of opinions, differences of style, and it came down to essentially a local policy thing, right?
It was an agreement. He didn't do anything wrong. Who did it? Where it failed, it was the government gave it to a civilian. And Dave, you hit it on the button with your 101 there. That the problem is it belongs to all of us. And the government now also responded, said the intent was that by giving it to him, that he would give it to everyone. And so you can throw money and books and all that other stuff in the mix, and that's the human. At the Experiencer Support Association, we're not studying the phenomenon, we're studying the people. And that includes everybody in the phenomenon and why they are the way that they are. And that's how I'm going to get disclosure, by figuring out, who's doing what they're doing. Not by looking at lights in the sky. It's there's lots of other things going on than just, weather phenomenon. So
yeah, it's like, wow. It's to me, it's just, I don't know.
It's information, though. It's what the facts are. The government has been honest, or at least releasing information for some time. I like that. They've been giving it out. They've declassified documents. There's over 9,500 documents. I have many of those behind me that I'm transcribing, getting up onto the website.
Do we know how much? Do we know how much data he got? Do we know how?
Well, no, and he's not going to release that because he's got a book coming out, and that's the other thing too. Is as soon as that book comes out, I'll be checking that book to see if that has anything to do. So here's the thing: is following those leads go, and go back to Dave's point is how do I feel about me being denied? That hasn't been confirmed yet, but when his book comes out or whenever he releases a document. I'll know that because when I pulled his file, I have everything that they gave him. So I'm waiting to see what he releases and when he releases it, because I bet it's in that book. And if it's in that book, then we have that motive to show that why he was holding on to it, it was to make the sale. Now, whether or not that's ethical and honest and all that other stuff, I'm not here to, to me, to get the answers on behalf of the entire country as a Canadian citizen, that's wrong. However, he's not the only person who's done that. So there's that industry issue. We have a social problem within, and I'm using that as an example. He's still a human.
On December the 3rd, I tested positive for COVID. I was to the point where I really couldn't even walk.
She was admitted to the Tupelo Hospital. That's where she remained for 82 days.
That was the first time they told Reggie he could come see me.
I nearly lost my wife. I mean, that's real. There ain't no false information. And I don't want to see you lose a loved one.
Sponsored by Delta Health Alliance. Go to getyourshotms.org.
When getting the job done right is job one, you need construction equipment that's built right. From compact track loaders to the world's #1 selling compact excavator, the Kubota construction lineup features durable Kubota engines, more comfort, and the versatility to do it all and do it right. Visit your local Kubota dealer today. Go to KubotaUSA.com for full disclaimer.
Lee Tractor Company. On the web at leetractor.net.
Human being, he was given the information, he had an opportunity, he cashed in on it. Now he's off the mountain, and I don't want to continue to trash him, but now he's starting to release these documents, and then now we can rebuild this trust, and he can and he can, start to do things right, and then that's where we get the change. And
it will be interesting if we find out, what the nature, not only the nature of the data he received, but what were the catalysts for the data he received. It like did everyone that filed, I forget what your guys' system is called. It's not a FOIA. It's
ATI, access to information.
ATI. So you file one of these requests. Just like how does that exchange go? And I don't know. It's just I don't know. It's just
it's quite simple. It's actually more simple. Later. Like Otis is very careful on how he explains things, and I understand that because he doesn't want his stuff to be scooped. He doesn't want there's other people trying to get this information out there.
But was everything funneled through that? I mean, did if anyone made the request at any time, did it go through him, and then he was the one that sent it out to them? Was he like a focal point?
Well, that was what was told in the media with another side of the other side of the group. So there's another circle that Chris is part of. There's another circle in which Dave and I. I'm not in a circle because I'm an investigator, but the circle that Dave's in, there are. Okay, I'll give you an example. I found it very interesting that Grant Cameron mentioned this, but he mentioned a researcher. So he didn't name Chris, but I know that he worked in the same university as Chris. Like I know that they know each other. So I was like, why wouldn't you mention that?
Lovely.
Yeah. So, but on that Chris side of things, with the his UFO survey that he puts in the media, what he did is he went around and got the information from MUFON Canada. When I worked at MUFON Canada, I was involved in doing that, and I poked holes in that because the information that he was putting on there wasn't accurate. He wasn't putting all the good juicy ones. He was dumbing it down. He was massaging the data, and I was able to prove that. So he could be, he might have been tasked to do that survey because that survey didn't come out until 1980. 80-ish, but he had already been getting the information from the government in the 70s. So something happened where he's collecting this, and then when I got involved with MUFON, the thing was, okay, pass your information to Chris. Chris will do the survey. It goes out in the media, and this was the thing. But then I started saying, when I got on this blog, it's like, how come he's not mentioning MUFON? Because like 80% of the reports that are in there are ours. So how come we're not in the media? And that's when I started looking at it a little bit closer and did the data and found all these other things out. And then turns out that by crapping on him, he contacted MUFON HQ, and the MUFON HQ tried to hey, he's a friend of ours. Yeah, why? He's lying. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. So that's my perspective that would agree that there was some sort of plan to at least regulate or control the media, because he's also a media guy. So does the punishment fit the crime, the intent? You know, like what I would really like is one day is for to do this round robin like this, sneak me in on an interview with Chris, because I would like to ask him these questions, because he won't talk to me, and he won't because he's a media guy. So it's frustrating, because that's the protocol for media. Don't say anything and it'll go away. Well, and then so is it wrong? Is he so he's not lying because he's not saying anything.
It's wrong, but it's wrong by policy. So he's doing what he's being asked to do, and he's doing that well.
But he still needs to explain himself. He still needs to.
Well, what's going to be interesting is when that does happen. And I'm talking years from now. Whenever years go by, at some point in the future, he'll be able to talk, and it's going to be really, because the thing is that I find it kind of funny. Like for you, Dave, there's that one organization, BF, the Bigfoot, the one that was like
BFRO.
stripping the woo. BFRO, it was stripping woo out of reports because they wanted them to meet this certain classification of physical attributes and so forth. And so you have them altering that data, and then here you have someone funneling, tuning, and weeding out the data and only giving out what they think is right. Like no one was getting a clear picture of anything.
But the opportunity was there. That's the thing. So let's give it the benefit of the doubt. Chris was. We have a lot of data to support that maybe he was tasked to cover it up. Maybe he wasn't, and then he just for some reason decided not to, or maybe he believed he was doing the best he could with what he knew, and the people. There's a lot of positives.
Yep.
That's why he needs to be here. But he won't talk to me, and I don't blame it. A lot of people won't talk to me because I've been privately investigating the phenomenon since 2015. I'm a licensed investigator. I own my own private investigating firm.
All right, guys. I'm going to get you both to hold on right there, and I apologize for cutting you off.
No, it's okay.
We do have to go to break here. We have John Hudson, the fedora-wearing UFO wonder, and Ryan Stacy from TessaCan.org, the Experiencers Support Association. When we return, more UFO talk outside of Canada and in on Spaced Out Radio in Hour 3. All right, boys, we're clear.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm glad
I'll be right back, guys.
I think it's totally possible that a lot of this was just the human nature of the people involved, right? It was their style of doing things, or it was their, it may have had some, just honest, just misguided, motivations to them, and it just escalated into a bigger problem because of the nature of the information that we're talking about.
Well, that's the thing, is they played the media game, right? He still has a chance to clear his name, and and by avoiding it is good. That's why I'm trying to say both sides, because the objectiveness too is there's still a side that I haven't gotten yet to hear him out. Maybe if I had a conversation with him like this and be like, you know what, I never hated you, or you know what, I never did this, and this is why, and it would make sense. But that avoidance part is what turned around and bit him in the butt, because he avoided it for so long because he knew he had control of the media. And then with Otis, but
doesn't that mean in his role he cannot go totally clean? We have to basically wait till he retires or something?
I have no idea. I emailed his employer and asked, if this was behavior in which they condoned or were aware of and tolerable. That wasn't as a UFO investigator. That was straight up from my private investigating firm. I got confirmation from another ufologist who's close with Chris that message was received, but the university still has not responded to my email, right? Because I got to send a lawyer, I got to sue, I got to find criminal, I got to find that criminal stuff for me to pursue it that far. So for me, everybody is a suspect in this disclosure movement. It's just everybody does everyone's trying. There's a lot of intent. And when you withhold something, if you're doing it for money, then okay, yeah, this is a thankless job. There's bills to pay, but say that, I got some stuff. I'm going to let it out. It's going to be in my book, and then I'll release it to the public for everyone else to have it. But if you got something, put it out there.
Oh yeah, I mean, we've seen that ourselves recently. I mean, in our country, there was times this past election where people were actually withholding information that would have been very pertinent in several of the major lawsuits that occurred toward the end of that year. And their books didn't come out till January, for like Christmas, and and it had all this stuff in it that like if we'd known back in July, it would have made a really big deal, and they held it for profit, right? And
and also with journalism and stuff like that too, they're only allowed to release their source documents based on what's in the story. So sometimes, like Otis, for an example, he one of his documents had. Was like a 7-page document, but he only released two of those pages because those were what was relevant to the story and what he was sharing. As an investigator,
like editor,
editors, of course, because they, whatever perspective and rules that they had. So he's even suppressed in some ways, but at least least the editor is allowing it to be posted.
Yes.
So that's also, I'll take the edit. That's progress. But the thing is, from an investigator point of view, I'm looking at this file. I got information. I go put boots on the ground and find out after the fact that there were 7 after I got my copy of it. That there was 5 missing pages, which was frustrating for me. But it's not his fault. It's just the way the industry works. There's a lot of industry problems. It's not.
No, one thing I'm curious about with your system is that in the U.S. Well, no one likes to talk about it because everyone likes to have so much faith in something. The FOIA process is not perfect. There is a tremendous amount of stuff that goes on that is FOIA exempt. And in honesty, it's the coolest stuff that goes on that's FOIA exempt, right? Like that's the most extreme stuff. That's the most, outward focus. I mean, those are going to be the most extreme cases. And so it's I don't know. It's
well, it comes back to the why exempt, right? We assume that it's a secret, and it's something that we need to have.
Right. But what I'm curious about. I'm sorry. What I'm curious about is that we know that we get a limited slice. Are you guys in the same position? Do you know for a fact that there is a group of things that are exempt from your policy, or do you know that
not that I know of? All I know is I ask. If they don't have anything, they tell me they don't. If they do have it, they give it to me.
Okay, so you can go on some amount of reasonable faith that if they give you everything, you actually got everything.
Yeah,
we can't assume that. Which is a really unfortunate side.
Well, I don't assume that they're giving me everything, but I know they're giving me more leads to follow than
there could be always,
America's giving you. Yeah, no,
there could always be. Yeah, it's not instantly perfect because of that, but it means that they're gonna. It's gonna work out better that way. So,
these service documents, those have been designed for us to fill out to give to U.S. to continue said investigations.
We got 1 minute.
Disclosure on your end will help us too, because U.S. might be continuing the investigations, and we just
take it. Dave?
We got less than 1 minute.
Okay. Yeah. No. It's. I mean, what kind of data? What kind of database is the stuff stored in?
Well, they're like, you mean the system? Like what?
Like
software
all the reports, all the reports,
right,
all this data that's created. We'll take it out.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
All right. I want to say a big thank you to Tim, Ed, Thomas, Snakes, Kat, Todd, and Rex for the amazing super chats tonight. Really do appreciate each and every one of you hanging on out and supporting this show. Thank you to everybody who's given us a thumbs up, thumbs down tonight. We're going to continue with the UFO talk here momentarily. Don't forget you can do some shopping at spacedoutradio.com/shop. Here we go, everyone.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam is set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Dapocaginous. Dapocaginous is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We got a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read up on Shirky Poo's Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show, on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio as well. We continue on tonight with UFO Talk. Ryan Stacy from the Experiencer Support Association is here, along with the fedora-wearing John Hudson from the Unbiased UFO Report. And gentlemen, you know, when we look at disclosure, we see things kind of rolling the way they are, both in the United States and around the world. This topic continues to be hot button, even though it is hot and then it's cold down and then it's hot once again. You know, we're coming close to the end of the year here. And, John, what do you see happening between now and the end of the year regarding any sort of movement towards disclosure, government assistance in this topic, as we see new motions being put forward? What do you see happening?
Depends on how that and how how long it takes to get all those bills signed into law. And if they, I mean, because the thing is that the thing I really like about what was just written up by Jill Gillibrand is that it's pretty well structured. It goes into a lot of, it goes into a fair amount of detail of how certain things should be set up and certain things should be done, and it's much more fleshed out than any of the other language we've seen. And so to me, it would indicate that essentially as soon as the funding gets enabled, you're going to see a little bit of an explosion of activity. It's going to involve assignments to all those different roles and so forth. And that could happen before Christmas. We don't know when that bill will be signed. So I think that could have a really interesting impact, especially depending on who the different people from different do it. Then the other thing is that, and this I think was one of the best parts of what's going on these days, is that there's so many things happening from so many very different places, that my guess is the top 2 or 3 interesting things that happens over the next 2 months will be from categories we'd never even thought of. They'll be from some left side, category. It's like, oh, I didn't expect to get data from there. It's, to me, it's one of the most fascinating things that you have all these, just vastly different data types. And, that's why I was asking you about the database before, because I was wondering like, how are you storing all your information and how do you make it accessible to people? Because, that in itself becomes a big problem too, because essentially if we're all collecting data and we're not collecting it in a way that we ourselves can share it, then what's the point in doing it, right?
I can try to explain it. I could also share my screen and show you to make it easier. But for the listeners, again, so like on the website, testacan.org, again, you just go there, there's an investigative portal. You basically go, I got to look at it, but you look for the data sets or you look for the visual evidence display. You just basically explore that panel, and then you'll see Canadian document events. You'll see timelines. You'll see all this other stuff.
Oh, so you put a little web interface on it so people can actually query the data.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sweet.
So we transcribe the document. So here's the thing. So I got a document, like, I got to find a document that's not classified. So like this document here, it's a text. This is the other problem too. Like take Greenwald for an example. Like he releases documents all over the place, all over the time, and then he blogs about it. But there's some speculation in there, so some opinion in there, and there's some facts. There's a lot of good work in that. But for me, as an investigator who's trying to catch up on things, I can't search it. I can't keyword it. I'm looking for something. I can't track it. So what I do with my team is we have them. Okay, here's a new doc. This one's current. Okay, and if Otis puts one out, I prioritize like based on things that come out. This is new. Get it out there. Give credit where it's due. Transcribe it. So we use some software to transcribe it real quick. Then we put it on the website. So that way on the website, if you go to the search panel and I want to search UFO or I want to search a name, and we start to get these trends, then all the articles will come up. There's a point of interest part. So where again, it'd be easier to show you, but on the website, the points of interest, you'll be able to see the names of everyone that's mentioned in these documents as I've been putting them up, the locations, the objects, all that other stuff, as well as links to those articles within the site. So that way you can start to see a pattern, be like, okay, this guy was mentioned, if as an investigator, I don't know who they are. I don't care who they are. I don't care what they've done. I'm looking for the pattern. So this guy has been mentioned 5 times. These are all the articles. I'm going to take a little closer look into this guy. So he's now a suspect, a point of interest. That's how, that investigative method. Then that same data is also put on a timeline. So you can look at the time proximity and see, okay, that's weird. In 52, this happened, and then this thing happened. Okay, and then you click on it, brings you to the same document. Then we also have the visual evidence database where I'm finding the exact location of where the event took place. So then it's not the building, it's whatever they're talking about. This is where the object is. And then you start to see visual patterns. And then also with the Experiencer Support Association, we investigate paranormal, ghosts, ET, monsters, everything, because we believe, and consciousness, because we believe it's all connected, that the contactee, all that other stuff too. And as an example, on their visual evidence database in Moose Jaw, Canadian Forces based Moose Jaw, there are 2 reports.
Where my mom was born.
Oh, really? Nice. There are 2 reports that are on there from government sources that I've retrieved, that's been transcribed and put there, that describe an orange orb-like thing in the sky. There's no physical evidence. There's no direct evidence. However, with the civilian stuff, I got a report that came in 2019, and I had the civilian draw what they saw. It looks like visually what the military sources had described 30 some odd years prior. But the thing is, with proximity, was we have a government source, we have a civilian source. Civilian on its own is not enough. Government is not giving us enough, but together, combined, I'm seeing that the location of these events are within 4 to 5 kilometers away from each other. That is a different set of data. So when a journalist writes this story and there's a document, that's great. But there's so much data that can be extracted from that and split into many different ways, and that's what I'm doing.
If you don't mind me asking, who paid for? I mean, once you get this all running, it's probably going to not be too bad. But who paid for the building of this whole data set? Like, in this, and I mean, who backs this financially? Because this isn't.
I paid for it. You can't
do this for free. You pay for it yourself.
I own a private investigating company. And this is what I do for a living. Every day, I'm either looking for someone who is skipping out on bail, who's cheating on their husband or their wife. I do this for a living.
I see. That sort of database. Okay.
Yeah.
Now
so it's just using the same tools and resources I already have.
One at a time, guys. One at a time.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. So I use the same resources that are already available to my private clients, and I make it available to people in the public. I just don't share my private stuff with in the public. So these are tools and resources that are available. So to answer your question, how can you help? Well, when there's something of significance, you let us know. We put it on the database. I mean, I'm only focusing on Canada because I'm Canadian, and that's also the whole that hasn't been explored yet. We might have answers for you.
On December the 3rd, I tested positive for COVID. I was to the point where I really couldn't even walk.
She was admitted to the Tupelo Hospital. That's where she remained for 82 days.
That was the first time they told Reggie he could come see me.
I nearly lost my wife. I mean, that's real. There ain't no false information. And I don't want to see you lose a loved one.
Sponsored by Delta Health Alliance. Go to getyourshotms.org.
At Capella University, you're in control of your education. With the game-changing FlexPath format, you can set your own deadlines and move at your own pace. The faster you move, the more you save. Visit capella.edu to learn more.
So I'm kind of, doing it that way. But if somebody wanted to take significant documents from the U.S. and do the same thing, I can add them to the database. I just give you instructions on what I'm looking for, and then we add it, give you credit where it's due, and then that database starts to build.
Did you look in at all about Valet's database for OSAP? This basically 11 database conjunction of did you get a chance to look into any of that?
So he's measuring things differently. It's a different type of measurement. So those are good. There's lots of databases. There's lots of classification systems. We have our own classification system. It's called the Ultra Spectrum Classification System, which is an advanced version of the Hynek and Valet scale. But from my perspective, I'm looking for who or what is responsible. I'm looking at this as criminal activity. This is something invading our airspace. This and
Yeah.
the abduction phenomenon. These are intruders. These are people kidnapping our people. These are people, possibly sexually assaulting our people.
Yep.
In the abduction phenomenon. I don't care if it's an alien. I don't care if it's a ghost. I don't care what you call it. You're still something is still happening to you, and you're not the only one. So I'm looking for a person to arrest or to charge. That's my motive or my method. And that's why I was so set on Chris, because I knew he was part of the problem.
Oh, gotcha.
And I was looking at him as a criminal, not as a ufologist, and that's what I got. Right?
Yeah.
So,
well, no, I mean, that just maps really well, right? I mean, like you just it's very basically, we are all very lucky that you happen to have a job that reskinned can basically provide everything you're doing for the this community as far as collecting data and so forth, and that's just to all of our benefits. And on as a side note, thank you, like thank you for doing that.
Well,
like
I appreciate that.
That's not a small amount of effort, but
it's a big
what
job.
I'm going to say really quick is that what frustrates me is that I've done some work in like big data type machine learning type environments, and essentially, when you normalize your data enough and you get enough data, like you get a large amount of data, you can start gleaning some really interesting things about what's going on. And, we need to, and I don't know how we do this, but and maybe what's in this bill will help make it happen, but we need to get to a point where we're slurping in all of these databases, like every single one we can get our hands on. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if right now the answer to a lot of our questions are out there. They're floating out there.
Well, I believe the
answers
answers are there. It's just nobody's connecting the dots.
Yep. I so
Canada
believe
has declassified 9,500 documents, and no one has done what I've done with the documents, and that's where I'm frustrated, because I look at a couple documents and I can solve a couple riddles. I'm like, well, that makes sense. On to the next. Like, by looking at it differently, it's a different perspective, and there are a lot of people putting the effort out there. These databases are important. It depends on what they're measuring and what their goal is. The other thing too with our ultra spectrum classification system is I'm recategorizing the events. I'm acknowledging the archetypes. So let's take UFO and UAP for an example. Okay. So a lot of people still float on the fence on whether or not what's a UFO and what's a UAP. So to break that down, it could be a machine or a light. It doesn't matter what it is. Those are two categories. It's either a machine or it's a light. You can call it those names, whatever, but these fit the characteristics of that. Both could be extraterrestrial. Both could be military. We don't know, but that's kind of, so we're investigating that differently. And then also allows the paranormal community to have their data quantified, because that is skeptical in many senses, because what's the difference between a UFO orb of light or a paranormal orb of light? We don't know that, but it's still testimonial data that can be used. So if we break it down now, how do I get both parties to agree on the same data? The academic community and paranormal community getting along with each other, we call it aerial activity, because we agree, both sides would have to agree that it's in the air, it's active. You guys can speculate on your own religions and faiths and all that other stuff on what it is. And then we get down to the sensory display, which is identifying the method in which you've seen it, because there's evidence that shows that you've seen it with your eyes, you're able to take a photo of it, or you saw it in your mind, or you heard it, or you felt it. All that information is valid. And whether you believe in those pseudosciences or not, what's common is that they're all seeing the same thing. What's different is we all are able to see it using a different sense.
All right. All right. Ryan, when you come down to the bare taxes of what's happening with disclosure, we hear that it has to come out of the United States. Everything seems to be trickled through there. And if you look at the Five Eyes, which is the United States, Great Britain, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, we see a lot of things happening along that route and sharing of information of UFO phenomena as well. The other countries, whether it's Australia, New Zealand, Great Britain, they've all had discussions on what the Americans have brought up here recently. And I asked Daniel Otis this earlier, but are you quite surprised that this subject has not reached the public part of the House of Commons yet?
No, I'm not really surprised because, I mean, the again, like looking at the evidence and me looking at it in detail, there doesn't, and with my background as investigating UFO sightings with MUFON for many years, over thousands of sighting reports, I'm not satisfied that there's enough evidence to suggest the extraterrestrial origin or a connection with the phenomenon. So even when I'm looking at Canadian documents, I go back to a 1952 document, there's conversations about it being German technology back in the Cold War. And there's enough factual evidence at that point to suggest that might be plausible then, but then we don't hear anything about it. So like maybe that was the truth. Maybe they just knew. And then, and here's the thing is that the Five Eyes, like you said, we're all look at it as businesses. The United States is in charge of a lot of things in the world. Canada needs U.S. for a lot of things, trades and things like that. With the pandemic, we learned there's certain things that they stop helping us with and things like that. There's a lot of issues with being neighboring countries. But the fact of the matter is, if the United States is in charge of everything and we know the answers, it wouldn't be very strategic for the Canadian government to come out and be like, yeah, it's just government tech, because they know. So they might just, my perspective is they're avoiding it but they know. That's why they don't care, because they know the truth. And it's important for the United States, and then we watch to see what the states do to kind of speculate that, because there are no borders with UFOs, so whatever this is, these Five Eyes, these alliances weren't created until after all this stuff has happened.
Well,
so something
but do keep in mind is that there is a certain amount of territory beyond the U.S. where we signed treaties with countries as we went in to assist them to build themselves, that they had to do things like automatically give us jurisdiction to any. So, I mean, there's been a lot of crashes down in South America that we've recovered. The local government hasn't kept, right? Now, I'd love to think that all the data that we pull on that ship back up in the United States gets sent in a nice envelope with a bow down to those researchers in Mexico. But I get a sinking little feeling that doesn't happen, right? So that information is being consolidated, in the U.S. more so than it probably is anywhere else, right?
And from a business perspective, that makes sense, because we don't know what it is. What if it is a biological weapon? What if it gets in the wrong hands? Like, we gotta trust your governments a little bit too. So like if we trust them that they are protecting the information for a valid reason, it's a little easier to accept and make sense of all this. Where we get this speculation, where we get this stuff, is we think because we get robbed on our taxes, because we lose on healthcare, and we suffer in other areas, we assume that they're lying here too. But what if this is a boy who cried wolf scenario? Maybe they are telling us the truth. So and I'm willing to take back that statement once we get disclosure. That means you guys were right and I was wrong. But I look at both sides, and when I kind of give them the benefit of the doubt and look at it as a business, I mean, there's a lot of personal information and a lot of people that could be harmed in releasing said information. So these, what are they protecting? Maybe it's not the craft, or maybe it's not the technology. Maybe it's the livelihood, because us as people will respond to that. We are very violent and aggressive people when we don't get what we want, and science has shown that. So I mean, it's a good strategy. Again, it's just a different way of thinking about it.
And the thing is that I think a lot of these questions don't even end up being bullying anymore. They just end up being, a little bit of each. I think in some cases it is American tech. Like you take like the Calvine case, the one that had that triangle on a poster on Nick Pope's back wall. That I now believe was a U.S. program. I really do. I really believe that. But that's going to happen once in a while. Some of them are going to be U.S. programs. Some of them are going to be, something local that is from around here. Maybe some of it's going to be from off planet. Maybe the ones that are off planet, there's going to be 5 different versions. I mean, there could be a lot of different things doing this, but they're all doing it in a similar enough way and are passive enough to us that we're grouping them all together into one big ball.
What I like is that the government knows about it. The government has it. So it's not out in the air. It's not attacking us. It's not doing anything. It's not dangerous right now. Yeah. So if they're not telling us, at least it's contained. And you know what? It's a secret. Fine. Why would it be a secret? Well, why do we keep other things a secret? Because the entire world gets the information. If they have technology that could win the next war, I would keep that secret in case the next war happens. So there's a lot of logical explanations for the lies or the secrecy, but they're not explaining that either. That would help too, to be like, yeah, it's ours. It's like the Rutowski thing again. They're not saying anything.
Yeah. Instead of like pretending that they're being all shadowy about it, just tell us, hey, we're censoring this. This is how much we're censoring. This is why we're censoring it that much. This is what you get. I mean, just like let's just be honest about what you're doing. Like no one's pretending that you're not doing this, right? So you might as well just let us know how you do it and be done with it.
But they're starting that now that you have your task force and the funding and all that other stuff like that. They're starting the process. Maybe this was all part of everything that's going. We're moving in that direction. We will get what we're looking for eventually.
Scheduled dissemination.
But you got to prep the entire world for it. You look at the pandemic. How there's so many. Even today, we're not reacting in unity. Yeah. So this might have been for those who believe this was a planned thing. If it was, we failed that test. If it wasn't, we still got lots to learn, So, I mean, if I was in the government's position and I had technology and I had to give this to open source for anyone to recycle and to use, if I was a betting man,
it's going to be,
a lot.
It's going to be,
there's a lot more harm.
True.
Could come out of it. Great power, great responsibility, all those other things. So I put a little faith and a little trust in our governments that whatever secrets they're keeping is for a damn good reason. And if it is extraterrestrial contact, I'll speak to those who have those psychic abilities and those paranormal experiences. We know that if they want to contact us, they will. And it's not these machines that we need to see. This, it's just there's other things happening to us. And we think that because of these things happening to us, it must be linked to that. But we don't even know if that has anything to do with the other phenomenon, which is why at Tessa we investigate everything. There's like this UFO thing for me is like right here and on this whole rainbow of other things. So,
all right, gentlemen, I'm going to get you to hold on right there.
Okay.
Because we are going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. Ryan Stacy from Tessacad. John Hudson, the fedora-wearing UFO not himself. I'm going to see if these guys can stick around for the next half hour, continue the UFO talk. We'll keep Ryan up late on the East Coast, John up early on the West Coast. Continue it right after this on Spaced Out Radio. My voice is so dry tonight. Right here.
So I met with this woman once. She was the CTO of a large insurance company, and I was talking to her, and she was saying how she'd recently done a deep learning project, and I was like, I want to hear about this, And I used to always ask these kind of customers I talked to. I'd ask, what's something you found that was weird, right? Because very often when you dig through really large data sets, you find weird stuff. And so essentially, I asked this, CTO, I'm like, what did you find that was weird, And she kind of smiled at me, and she kind of explained to me they had to have a team come in, from outside and basically, do this whole analysis thing on their data. And it wasn't like a complicated AI thing. It was just a simple, data mining sort of operation. And she kind of looked at me and she kind of grinned. She's all weird. I'm like, yeah. And she goes, people who fish, like not people who fish professionally and not people that just fish once in a while, but those people that fish like every year they go on like 2 or 3 week-long fishing trips. Those people spend more money on our product, are more loyal in as customers and provide more elasticity of actual payments from over time. Like those are our best customers. And we found that those are related. And I'm like, okay, so what are you going to do with that information, right? And the funny thing is you have two choices. You can say, well, we'll go advertise the insurance company at the bait shop, and probably not the best choice. You start looking at why it's the Fisher people that basically meet this characteristic so well. What is it about them that makes them happy customers? And then you look for those people in other data sets, right? But the point is that you can find some really weird stuff and you would have never expected that really takes you in a completely new direction of trying to figure something out. That's incredibly helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, doing that, like I would love to just do handwriting analysis across everything from 1945 to yesterday. I want to see handwriting analysis on everything in that whole period. I want to find out what's common, what matches, what doesn't match, right? What shows trends, what's a baseline we should see of signature changing over a lifetime. I mean, you can start asking all these and get all these variations of percentages, and you can glean a lot of really interesting information once you start normalizing and pumping that data into a system.
Statement analysis would be also a good thing too. Whenever our lovely Lou Elizondo, however side of the fence he's on, he's done a plethora of podcasts and said many different things back and forth. But
you could have a wonderful 3-dimensional topology thing of showing words stated and
statement analysis, the words he chooses and the adjectives and everything is important.
Oh, that would be awesome. That would be awesome.
I could do it, but he's not on my radar right now. I got other fish to fry. I'll let someone else.
It's hard not to really geek out on some of this stuff, man. That's really cool. That's actually really, really cool.
But I mean,
I'd love to see. I would love to see OSAP's database.
Everybody would too.
Can we just get a public API? That'd be so nice. Just like just some kind of a public web connector of some sort. We can just connect to, send queries, get data back. It'd be so nice.
Yeah, but it depends on what you're getting data on. What if it's secret tech? What if it's for war? What if it's just in case? Well, break the glass kind of. You will know when we need to know.
It's their responsibility to make sure they don't give me something that's gonna, that they shouldn't be giving me, right? But whatever I get, and that's the whole thing too. Is that how much data do you really get? And I think for you, it's probably likely that the data you get is pretty much the data there. I think one of the big problems in the US right now is that so many programs are FOIA exempt. I mean, it's basically anything that's really like fun.
Yeah, but then you got to ask yourself, right? And speculate around the why. Why is it exempt?
Well, no, I know, but my point is that what that means is that we only see the stuff that made it into FOI. So we're only seeing like a splintering of the infrastructure. The rest of it was all on the other side, and we don't see it. And so we're having to make these assumptions based on a very small amount of data,
hold on,
and
guys.
inferring, how to get there.
I've got this shooting pain from my wrist right up to my elbow, my left arm.
What?
Shooting pain. Been there like a day and a half. It's just annoying the crap out of me right now. Anyways, big thank you to Tim, Ed, Thomas, Snakes, Cat, Todd, and Rex for the amazing super chats. Really do appreciate it. Don't forget you can shop for your SOR swag on our website. And, of course, you can give us a thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways, whatever you feel. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. We're going the distance tonight, right now. We rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot, reading Shirky Poo's Newswire, and checking out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. Check out our new TikTok. We haven't put any videos out yet. We're going to be doing that soon, but it's at Spaced Out Radio on TikTok. For the final time tonight, we introduce our guest from Tessacan, which is the Experiencers Support Association. Ryan Stacy and the fedora-wearing John Hudson is here as well, hanging on out and checking it out with us, talking to UFOs all night long. Gentlemen, in regards to the way the research is going, there is a current narrative that is happening and taking place, and it continues within the U.S. government as they try and figure out what is going on with this UFO phenomena. John, I want to start with you about this because I believe it's Senator Gillibrand who has a new proposal up on the table, if you want to break that down.
Yeah, so this is a really nice turn.
On December the 3rd, I tested positive for COVID. I was to the point where I really couldn't even walk.
She was admitted to the Tupelo Hospital. That's where she remained for 82 days.
That was the first time they told Reggie he could come see me.
I nearly lost my wife. I mean, that's real. That ain't no false information. And I don't want to see you lose a loved one.
Sponsored by Delta Health Alliance. Go to getyourshotms.org.
Unexpected trouble? CashNet USA can take the stress out of borrowing emergency funds. Our fast, secure application process makes it easy to apply online 24/7. Plus, CashNet USA offers same-day funding if approved before 10:30 a.m. Central Time, Monday through Friday. Additional terms may apply. Visit cashnetusa.com or tap the banner to apply today.
Events, and I honestly, this is kind of what I was hoping was going to happen, because originally the wording that was in the Senate version of the bill before was just kind of carbon copy of what we already had before with the UAPTF, and it was really the House that first introduced new language that was far more aggressive and looked for an office to be created and set up some other things, but it was still very kind of vague, and it's but it did a lot more than the other group did. And then that basically triggered then the Senate to come back and say, oh, okay, you guys really want to do something. So we'll take that wording and we'll also go back and we'll pull stuff from here. We'll pull stuff from there. There's some indication that some language from one of Science Bob's papers ended up in there. There's some rumor going around that Chris Mellon might have had some influence over some of it. There might have been a lot of input, but the nut of it is that it ended up with being a pretty nice written attachment, and it builds it all out really nicely, and it gets into a lot of detail and says NASA must supply this many people to this committee, and Galileo must appoint this many people to this committee, and it kind of goes through and it very clearly lays out like what the structures are, what the layers are, what the oversight is. I mean, it builds out a nice there's still, you could still flush out a lot of detail, but it is a really, really good beginning, and it's written in a way that I think that as soon as you get funding, you can basically start on it, because essentially there's enough there that I think you can get moving to a certain degree. And so it's a really good thing. And when we first heard about it, we didn't know if it was going to catch on, because a lot of people make proposals for amendments and just you never hear about them again. They don't get anyone's attention, and so they just die in the weeds. And she hadn't even done a press conference on it yet. But then over the last couple of days, we've seen a lot of different media operations basically pick up that article and spread it around. And so I'm hoping that we drum up enough attention that people start paying attention, and that might really have an impact. So that's that's good stuff.
John,
it's all just baby steps.
Why is Senator Gillibrand really hot to trot on the UFO topic?
So I don't know for sure. If I had to guess, it's probably because she saw one when she was a little kid, and she's always known they were real. I mean, honestly, like it's probably something like that. She's probably heard some story from a best friend, some story from a cousin, or she saw something herself, or she just really always liked the idea that there were, people from another planet. I think people in these roles look for projects that they can personally get invested in, that they personally have a good feeling about, that means something to them, because it makes it easier to drive your passion when you feel that way. You want something out of something. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's purely just, she has a fascination for it and she just took the opportunity to get involved.
Ryan, up here in Canada, I don't know if you have sources in Ottawa or not, because I don't really discuss your sources with you, but from what you're hearing, are a lot of Canadian politicians paying attention to what is happening in the United States regarding this subject?
Well, so as a private investigating firm, I do have sources that do speak to me. I mean, there is chatter, but I mean, they're young. So for me, from my perspective, this is a generational thing. They're trying to get the older ones to share some stuff, and I mean, a lot of them are experiencers themselves, and they're, I don't know, they kind of encourage the civilian side of things. So they're getting the message out, getting more people together, bringing that data. I know that they're paying attention to what I'm saying and what we're doing. I know that when I do my access to information requests, I can tell that, I keep track of who responds and emails and things like that. And I formulate professional relationships. I'm not aggressive when I ask for this information, please and thank you. That courtesy kind of goes a long way. So I've gotten to some
Canadian.
Yeah, typical Canadian. Yeah. So, but I've gotten to a place where I've explored the liberties by saying, hey, can I have some questions? Would you mind helping me? And they've been helpful. So I'm kind of exploring that. So I wouldn't necessarily say I have direct sources, but I do have an open line of communication that seems to be working at this stage. I don't want to be, like what Otis was saying earlier about sending letters to Parliament and all that other stuff. Like, that is a tactic. And it is within our rights and stuff like that to get it on the table and all these other things. But it's also an aggressive attack. It's also it's a lot of effort, and it's annoying. It would be a very annoying approach. So, you get more bees with honey than you do with vinegar. And I feel like when I got my first document, first of all, I had conversations with Richard Dolan, Paul Hellyer, before he passed. His eyes lit up when he saw this. The first thing he said to me is, "Who are you and why do you have this?" I was like, "Oh, Mr. Hellyer, that
must have been cool."
Yeah, right. So he's like,
that must have been really cool.
Well, the document itself said no threat, and this was a UFO thing, that there was a bright light chasing an aircraft. And then his comment was, well, for it to be no threat, they have to know what it is.
Yeah.
So
I wonder if the pilot agreed.
Yeah, well, we don't know, and it's just so. And then I talked to like other people, like Randy Kramer, other people. Like, I mean, you think what you want with him, but like I had conversations about why would why me? Why is the military giving me this? Right. And then the conversation that I'm hearing is that they've been given, there's just no one's using it. So they're kind of, there was kind of that test. So like, I mean, I have conversations with Otis. Otis has his sources. He doesn't want to give them up. I would give up my sources. It's just I have confidentiality agreements. I'm doing a legitimate business. I have to protect my people. So a lot of people trust me because I can give them confidentiality agreements if information needs to come forward, and I can be that beacon for them if they leak information to me. And I always project that. So I feel like, because Otis is like, where did you get this document? Or how did you say this? And how did you do this? What is your wording? And I don't think I'm wording it any differently. I just feel like there's a list and there's a bunch of people that are asking for it. I am aware that they're aware of what I'm doing with it. And if I was doing something harmful with it, then perhaps they would stop giving me the information.
Right.
The problem I have is I don't have enough hands to help me transcribe and put the documents up. at a pace that I'd like to do it. I will tell you that there's a shift in business with Tessa. We are going to make it an official media and production company. And with that, we'll be able to film and do our own documentaries, do our own shows, do our own things with our circles and stuff like that, get the information out there without, doing all these other things. But then there'll be a budget that'll allow me to pay my current staff to escalate the process, because there's steps involved. I do it all, so I need help, but people need to make money. And that's the other thing, is the money is, we can't ignore the fact that money is important here. Disclosure also would disclose the cost, and then there's that tax implication and where you're spending the money, and there's so many problems with that. And but if we paid people to help, then that helps. But then there's that leverage, there's that control, there's the money's also a bad thing. It's really hard to do it. So that's why I just pay for everything. I don't collect the funds. I wanted to be in this business when I started the business. It's always been my goal. I'm living the dream. And now with the association, I'm trying to create opportunities for others to use it. So this stuff that I'm talking about is open source for anyone to use and anyone to contribute. It's just that I need others to put in the effort. Just tell me where to look, or give me the documents, do that part, and we'll put it up, give credit due. And in the meantime, I'm just going to focus on Canada because it's an unexplored area. And I see that with my sources. Like, I mean, how else did I know that the thing with Rutowski? The problem that I had is I'm not mainstream media. I'm not a journalist. I'm not famous. I'm not, I'm just a guy in a small town in Canada, Ontario, with a problem that happened to be a big deal, and that message got around too. So,
well, I mean, at some point, what we really need is something that's very grid-like and very universal. And if, for example, I mean, this might be an old way of doing it, but like if you were, for example, to create a network of clubs in universities and colleges. Mm-hmm. So you made sure that, at every university, every college, you had some sort of a satellite office that was able to, take reports, is able to, notify of meetings, whatever, right? Just some kind of a focal point, and actually build a network to the point where, if some case happens in Wales, right, and that as soon as those bits can get across the pond, you have people here that have the choice. They don't, obviously this isn't a job for most of them, so you can't force anyone. But as soon as that data shows up, they have a choice. They can start acting on it, and once we get there, it's going to. I mean, there's so many ways we can grow this. It's only going to get better.
Resources. It's only going to get better. Yeah, no, we do have resources in other countries. I'm just on disclosure. I'm focusing on Canada, but like with the civilian stuff, I have reports in US. I have stuff from UK. I have stuff from Australia. I have contacts all over the world. The thing is, I gotta remember that I'm private. So a journalist puts their stuff open source, radio, everything this is the public. I just don't get to. I can't show what I do privately because it's confidential. But with the Experiencers Support Association, working with the experiencers, and creating and doing it in the systematic way, it doesn't matter who the source is if I'm able to link it with government documents. It's about stacking the evidence. And also what I'm doing with these other countries and these other places too is helping them regulate the data. So with our classification scale, we measure it in terms of evidence, in terms of groupings. So it doesn't matter how it comes to us. I just repackage it and put it in a way that's in a universal language. It's like the English of classifications.
Ryan, is it still about dots in the sky and weird anomalies in the sky, or is it further beyond that now when it comes to potential disclosure?
Well, this is the scary thing is and the whole reason, the premise of the Experiencers Support Association is not to push for disclosure. It's to prepare for what happens after. So the abduction and like disclosure will happen. I would like it to take its time because there's still a lot of things that need to
disclosure
prep up.
Insurance.
Yeah, But the thing is as much as we want to get the answers, there's people listening that are like, you know what? If it's a UFO, that means aliens are real, which means that that is, you know, sexual event that I had last night that scared the hell out of me really happened and it wasn't a dream. So there's a lot more phenomenon going on than
look,
just
and let's
this.
all joking aside,
Yeah.
that's a heavy thing to have someone go through, right?
Yeah,
That's
and privately we work
heavy,
with people and we connect
that's,
them with resources. We have a lot of support groups and things like that we you know, and being in that firm, we have people that can help, but they can't come public either because they'll lose their job. But you know, there's that stigma. So for me, it's not that these machines are useless in the scheme of things, but as an objective investigator, because I don't know enough, I know enough about the UFOs to know that it's not important, but I don't know enough to know that I'm wrong. So I have to still follow this just in case, because I'm responsible for helping these experiencers through this experience. Because what's going to happen now, if the United States says, yeah, we got UFOs, my job becomes a little bit easier, but a little bit harder, because then these people are going to think that their experience is this. And then what I'm going to have to do is be like, it might be, but I think it's something else, or that doesn't have to do with this. That's something else completely. So now I'm going to have to, like, you know, mediate. And that's what I've been doing. And by doing that, and releasing the trauma and the stresses, I'm getting better data. I'm getting people to come forward, willing to go on camera.
Yeah, and you know, and what you're touching on is I really think long term we're going to see a massive explosion of roles in the psychiatry and psychology fields. Basically, a whole lot of professionals focused on helping, you know, contactees, focused of helping people that were abducted, you know, and that's going to end up being like the whole world is going to have that in spades in, I don't know how many years, like 5 years, 10 years, whenever it's going to happen. That has to happen. Where, you know, how do you get from here to there?
Well, here's the thing: is we're not waiting for that. We're not waiting. We're doing that. We actually have stuff in motion. So Tessa has been private because of my local clients, and wasn't sure about, you know, that taboo and losing the business. But we've recently, since Halloween, we took the opportunity to put out a campaign to introduce Tessa. The big reveal of introducing Tessa to the local area is going to happen. And what's going to happen once it becomes public, what we're going to be doing is working with the local areas to create events for UFO, for paranormal, all those other things, with awareness. But what we're going to do is raise money and for mental health, for PTSD, for all those things. So that way, what we're hoping for is that, yeah, sure, we're not, you know, we don't really care about the stigma about all that other stuff, but you're raising money for us. So the UFO connection with that, with those therapies, then we start to get a little bit of that going on in the media, preparing for it, because what we want is to be able to refer these people to actual government psychologists without, you know, being locked up. We want them to think that it's possible, or at least have them do some CBT, DBT, all those therapeutic programs, you know, and to help it accept experience or testimony that way too. And by raising money for these foundations, you know, that's the only way.
Well, and that's the thing is it's a little bit of everything, right? Some people's sightings are their mental health. It's not a lot. It's probably a small percentage, but some percentage are. Some people have mental health problems and they actually saw something. That's another percentage of people, right? And then you have others, and that's the thing is it's not like this whole, like there's none of this and all of this. It's like what we have is it's human. So it's going to be, you know, 10% are going to be like this, 20% are going to be because of this, some are going to be because of this, some of it's going to be because of this. And honestly, what I'm worried is going to happen for some people is I worry that we're going to start identifying these groupings and we're going to start better categorizing things for what they are. But I think the big story of figuring out how they're all connected and what you know what the big framework is, I have a sinking feeling that could take a couple of decades to figure out. Like
I've already
I think
figured
that
it
might
out.
be huge.
Like that's the thing.
Oh, wow.
This ultra spectrum class, like there's a book that I'm like a report that I'm about to put out that will explain everything that you're looking for. I assure you that. And I've broken it down to connect it all. It's a systematic way that makes absolute sense. However, it's on the civilian side. It's not going to be, there's a lot of like I've already created the environment that we need. What I'm doing now is trying to at least be trustworthy that people, or at least try to earn that trust or give that example, that opportunity, so people will trust me to take what they're doing and make it better. I'm going to facilitate that. If anyone's going to leak anything, I would probably be the best source in terms of protecting your confidentiality, because I have to do that for a living. I have insurance and I'm on the private side, so like I kind of want to advocate that. And if people do have information, because I have to protect that. It's not like, so there's these tools and resources that everyone's been missing, that everybody wants. I hear it all. And instead of, and all this time, what I've been doing is building what we need, instead of waiting for someone else to have it. Now that I have it, I just got to do an awareness campaign. Once the pandemic's up, I'm going to go back and revisit. I'm going to start with Falcon Lake, because that's what Rutowski's famous for, and I want to make sure that he didn't flub that up. But I'm going back there.
Dave, we need to go find more people that are in his kind of roles around the country, and start trying to motivate some of them to start doing this. Because the thing is, so much of what he does for his private business really maps well to this research. I mean,
agree.
in a way,
and on
we're
that,
like the best
and on that
weird,
note, gentlemen,
weird version.
I got to say goodnight to all of you guys, because that flew by. 90 minutes flew right by. And Fedora John, we'll talk to you tomorrow night. And, of course, Ryan Stacy from Tessacan.org, the Experiencer Support Association. Really appreciate you coming on in on short notice. And we want to say a big thank you to journalist contributor of Vice, Daniel Otis, for coming on in and breaking down the Canadian side of what's happening in the world of ufology. I don't know if I fully agreed with him, but it was a good conversation nonetheless. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight on YouTube, Twitch, LJAB, Revolution Radio, Spreaker, Facebook, the Space Travelers Club, and on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo Train has docked for the night, but soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night.
Unexpected trouble? CashNet USA can take the stress out of borrowing emergency funds. Our fast, secure application process makes it easy to apply online 24/7. Plus, CashNet USA offers same-day funding if approved before 10:30 a.m. Central Time, Monday through Friday. Additional terms may apply. Visit CashNetUSA.com or tap the banner to apply today.
The following is a commercial message.
Hi, Kevin O'Leary here from Shark Tank and Beanstalk's chairman and co-owner. If you'd like to invest with me in a new fintech business, listen to this. Over 100 million Americans have no investment account. So we built Beanstalks to make investing easy and automated and to have a real impact. We then launched a crowdfunding so people can invest with me in the Beanstalks business with as little as $250. Check our website for links to the crowdfunding info. BEANSTOX.
Beanstalks is an SEC-registered internet-based investment advisor. Investing in securities involves risks and potential for loss. Before investing, consider your risk tolerance and investment objectives. For more details, see our website at www.beanstalks.com. Investments in securities are not FDIC insured. Kevin O'Leary is a strategic advisor and paid spokesperson for Start Engine, which owns the funding portal hosting the offering.